believed to remain. Now, we must now allow justice to take its course. The attack on Monday evening has understandably caused anger and profound concern. However, there is a line between concern and disorder, and we must never allow it to be crossed. So, let me be absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker. There is no excuse for the disgraceful scenes of violence and disorder that occurred in Northern Ireland last night. Houses and vehicles were set on fire, placing lives at risk, terrifying law-abiding citizens and forcing residents to flee their homes. Reports that ethnic minorities were targeted are sickening. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would like to pay tribute to the police and the other emergency services for their work last night. Faced with an extraordinarily challenging situation, they responded with great courage and they are owed our thanks. Our message to those responsible for last night's disorder is altogether different. To them, we say this: you will be caught and you will face the consequences of your actions. As of this morning, there had been 3 arrests, but more will surely follow. To those considering joining further disorder, my message is clear: do not do it. You will be held accountable for your actions. You will feel the full face of the law. Policing is, as members are aware, a devolved matter, but the Home Office is, of course, monitoring the situation very closely, and we are working with operational partners to understand and act on any implications for public order across the United Kingdom. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I recognise that tensions are running high. At times like this, there is even more onus on us all as the custodians of our democracy to respond with unity, to choose our words and actions with care, and to uphold the first duty of the state, maintaining order on the streets and keeping the public safe. Because the shameful scenes that we saw last night are not who we are, and they never will be.
Claire Hammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been a shocking 2 days in Northern Ireland. The horrific knife attack in North Belfast has left a man fighting for his life and an entire community distressed by what they've seen. Justice must, of course, take its course and deliver for that victim whose family have asked for calm. But last night brought further outrage. Children in my constituency and others lifted out of their beds as their homes burned. Masked men roamed the streets, going door to door, menacing and setting fire to cars and buses and homes, terrorising people on the basis of the colour of their skin or the sound of their voice. People from Sudan, people from India, people from Ukraine and people from Belfast. And today, businesses are shuttered. Medical appointments are cancelled. Schools are being closed for fear of getting young people home. So many people are frightened to walk the streets and frightened to be in their own homes tonight. And for all the online agitators who stoke this stuff up, when they move on to their next target, we'll be the ones left to pick up the pieces. People are, of course, entitled to their views on immigration, and of course government policy isn't perfect, but this hasn't been a debate or a conversation. There haven't been proposals, there haven't been honesty about the trade-offs, there has been mob justice and some of the same old proposals for a hardened border on the island of Ireland. Political leaders have a duty to lead, not to lean into people's worst fears and anxieties. That video of the awful crime in North Belfast was unusual in its brutality, but the cycle of deflection and disorder has not been unusual. We have seen this movie too many times before. In Belfast, we know all about blaming an entire community for the actions of others. We know all about scapegoating, we know all about tit-for-tat violence, and we know all about street justice. Violence creates division, it's affecting our economy, and it's undermining the vast majority of people in Northern Ireland who want to work together to build a better future. What support will the government provide to those who have been harmed by this awful violence? Can they ensure swift justice for all of the perpetrators of the last few days? And what will they do to bring to heel the online platforms who drive this madness?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the Honourable Lady has described with great clarity the impact of the scenes that we've seen in Northern Ireland over the past number of hours. And let me be absolutely clear, the scenes of disorder we witnessed in parts of Northern Ireland last night are not only damaging communities, but they are quite literally putting lives at risk. Like her, I utterly condemn the attacks on property and vehicles and the other related violence that we've seen. There is no justification at all for this type of thuggery, and there is no place for it in Northern Ireland or anywhere else for that matter. Now, I know that she will agree that it is now vital that the Police Service of Northern Ireland are given the time, the space and the full support that they need to continue with their investigation. The rule of law must and will prevail, and justice must and will be served. Violence is never a justified response, and this disorder only causes pain and suffering for those living in the area, as the Honourable Lady has very eloquently described. Now, those involved do need to take a step back and consider the consequences of their actions. And I would strongly urge anyone who has information, no matter how small it might seem, to come forward and to contact the PSNI urgently in order to assist them with their inquiries. The Honourable Member specifically asked about what support is being offered. She will know and understand that the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is in Belfast today, and I know that he will be working with colleagues over there to make sure that they have the support and the resources that they need to deal with this very troubling situation.
Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary.
Monday night's attack was disgusting and barbaric. The victim suffered serious injuries to his neck and lost an eye. The thoughts of the whole House, I'm sure, are with him. I thank the police and emergency services for responding and pay tribute to members of the public who so bravely intervened. I commend the police for confirming the suspect's identity swiftly, because full transparency in these cases is vital. Can the Minister confirm PSNI will have all the resources needed to deal with these issues? We've all seen the footage of the appalling attack featuring a Sudanese illegal immigrant. But let me be clear, violence of any kind in protest is never justified. Innocent people should never be targeted, and nobody should ever set fire to houses or cars. Speaking as a father, no one should ever feel unsafe in their homes. The police, I hope, will bring the perpetrators swiftly to justice. I do understand, though, why people are angry. The suspect came into the UK illegally. He should never have been here in the first place. Mainstream politicians must now understand how angry the public are about mass illegal immigration. If mainstream politics does not stop this, the public will turn elsewhere. Since the election, 73,000 people have entered the country illegally via small boat, mostly young men. Many have committed serious crimes. I recently met the mother of Rhiannon White, a young woman brutally murdered by a Sudanese small boat migrant. There have been multiple rapes and sexual assaults, with victims as young as just 13. I've come over time to realise there is ultimately only one way to end illegal immigration: by leaving the ECHR so we can deport all illegal migrants on arrival. Then illegal migration will stop, and these appalling crimes with it.
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to the Shadow Home Secretary for the points that he have raised, and particularly for the clarity with which he made the point about violence never being justified. He's absolutely right, and I hope that we can speak with a strong sense of unity about that. He specifically asked about ensuring that PSNI have the resources that they need to do the difficult work that they're being asked to do at this particular moment. I know that he understands that, of course, policing is devolved, but the Secretary of State, as I said a moment ago, is in Northern Ireland this morning to work out what more we can do to provide support and to make sure that the PSNI have got the resources that they need. He spoke about the anger that people feel, and that is absolutely understood. I'm sure all honourable and right honourable members will have seen the footage that is circulating online, and whilst clearly I have to be incredibly careful not to get in the way of a live investigation, it is understandable why people will feel extremely angry at what they've seen. But it is very important that that anger does not tip over into criminality, to the kind of thuggish behaviour that we've seen. Now, he rightly raised concerns about the importance of making sure that this government, as with any government, has the right framework in place to deport those foreign national offenders who come here and commit criminality. I mean, I think he is aware of the figures. There have been 67,000 deportations and removals under this government, which marks a significant increase. I hope he and the House recognises the seriousness and the urgency with which we take these matters. They need to be dealt with calmly and effectively, but this government will do everything that we can, everything in our powers, and if there are further powers required, we will make sure that we have them to deport and remove those people who raise a threat to the public.
On the Secretary.
Mr Speaker, and I'd like to congratulate my friend, the Honourable Member for Belfast South and Mid-Down, on securing her urgent question. And I also would like to pay tribute to the Chief Constable and the PSNI and the emergency services for their work, and their bravery continues to be unstinted. Does the Minister agree that the events we witnessed last night demonstrate the importance of political leaders speaking with one voice in condemning violence, rejecting extremism and supporting those working to build a shared and prosperous future for all communities and the people in Northern Ireland?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm very grateful to her, not least because I know that she has a very long-standing interest in Northern Ireland. She's absolutely right to highlight the bravery of the police. I've spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland over the years and have something of a sense of the importance of the work that they do and the risk that they carried. And looking at the scenes that unfolded last night, it is impossible not to conclude that the police did an incredibly good job under very difficult circumstances, and I absolutely pay tribute to them and their service and, of course, their families who will have been at home sick to death with worry at the kind of risk and threat that their loved ones were having to deal with. She's right to raise the importance of responsibility. As political leaders, as members of this House and further afield, we should all understand that words have consequences. And at moments like this, whilst I understand the temptation for some to score cheap political points, I think what the public expect is all of us to rise above that and think about how we can stand together and address these problems that we undoubtedly face.
Paul Cole, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My thoughts, as the thoughts of the whole House, are with Stephen Ogilvie, who suffered truly horrific injuries on Monday night, and with the residents of Belfast forced to flee by rioters who do not speak for any legitimate community grievance. The knife attack was repugnant, but so too were the scenes that followed. This is the second consecutive summer of racially motivated disorder in Northern Ireland, which the PSNI has faced while understaffed and underfunded. Now, the Minister rightly says the PSNI should be given time and space, but will he confirm what additional financial support the government will provide the PSNI, because they need it? Whilst the alleged attacker had leave to remain, concerns about irregular migration across the Northern Ireland border are being exploited by right-wing extremists to foment hatred and division. Given the importance of accurate information, can the Minister also confirm whether the government will begin collecting data on such crossings, as officials were unable to provide it when I recently raised the issue as a member of the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee?
Well, I'm grateful to him for the sensible way in which he's brought his points forward. He's right to raise points with regard to the resourcing of PSNI. The government absolutely recognises the financial pressures that PSNI faces. As he will understand, policing is largely a devolved matter in Northern Ireland, but in recognition of the security situation in Northern Ireland, the government is providing PSNI with 37.8 million in additional security funding for each financial year until 28-29. And as I've said, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is there with the Chief Constable, John Boucher, this morning. And I'm certain that they will be having conversations about whether there is more that we can do to provide support. He also, I think, made some entirely reasonable points, including around transparency. And I agree with the points that he's making. It's important always that there is transparency in this case and in all cases, but I know that he will understand that I'm very limited in terms of what more I can say because of the ongoing live police investigation.
Madam Joking.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I thank my friend from South Belfast Mid-Down for her question and to the Minister for his answers. And of course I think about the victim of the grotesque knife attack early this week. Now, Mr Speaker, Northern Ireland is a wonderful place with wonderful people, and the scenes on the streets of Belfast that we saw were utterly disgraceful and do not reflect the Northern Ireland that I know, that I love, and that many of my family live in. I'm particularly concerned about the young people who've had to bear witness to the violence and disorder, as generations of young people in Northern Ireland have too. So can I ask the Minister what support will be given to the Northern Ireland Executive to ensure that the young people of Northern Ireland are protected, supported and shielded from the disgraceful impacts of the criminality we saw in Belfast last night?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to him. I think he makes an important wider point, which is those of us in this House who don't represent constituencies in Northern Ireland, many of us will have a long-standing affection and knowledge of the place. And I first went there in 1998 and have been a regular visitor ever since. I think it is an extraordinary part of the United Kingdom. It is a place that has been on something of a journey over the years. And when I was in Northern Ireland just recently, I was incredibly impressed with that journey and the progress that has been made in recent times. And I think we have a shared endeavour across government and across this House to ensure that that journey continues in a positive direction. Key to that is the point that he made about young people in Northern Ireland, and we have an absolute shared responsibility to them to make sure that they can enjoy the brightest possible future. And I know that that will be an absolute priority for the Secretary of State and for other colleagues right across government.
Chair of the Home Affairs Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I join others in paying tribute to the Police Service of Northern Ireland, who have once again acted without fear or favour and walked bravely into some of the most dangerous situations. But following on from the previous question about young people, I was struck by just how many young people were involved in the disorder yesterday, incited both by what they've seen on social media, but also by those gangmasters who have groomed those young people into committing violence day in, day out across Northern Ireland. So can I ask the Minister if the Home Office would look into a review of the treatment of young people in Northern Ireland and the way that so many of them have been groomed? In effect, it's modern slavery.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Lady, who I think makes a really important point. And yes, I absolutely give her that commitment that working with colleagues in the Northern Ireland office, we will do that. Like her, I was struck with the presence of young people taking part in this criminality in Northern Ireland. We've seen that before in the bad old days of the Troubles, and we must never go back to that. I think there are some specific points that we're looking at around the extent to which any of this criminality and disorder has been directed by paramilitary groups in Northern Ireland, but not yet in a position to say more about that. She may well be aware that the UK government provides 50% of funding for a programme that's specifically designed to tackle paramilitary activity and organised crime. Currently, that's £8 million of investment that goes into that. But I absolutely accept and agree with her key point that we've got to make sure that young people in Northern Ireland are diverted from paths of criminality, and that is a matter that I will take up with colleagues in the Home Office and also with the Secretary of State.
Joe White.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Member for her question? We have people in this House and beyond, including currently from Moscow, whipping up hate and disorder in our country. And what happened last night in Northern Ireland is a sickening example of that. Children nearly died. Mr Speaker, all of us in this House agree that we must secure our borders. Would the Minister agree with my proposal that the sight of people arriving here by boat or crossing from Ireland can be ended by processing asylum claims at the nearest point of safety, thousands of miles away, thus bringing an end to the trade of people smuggling?
Mr Speaker, well, in terms of the Honourable Lady's first point, she's right in the sense that there will, very concerningly, always be malign actors seeking to whip up community tensions through the use of mis- and disinformation, and we are acutely alive to that, and we will work with partners and law enforcement to make sure that we are on top of all of that. In terms of her second point, I'm joined on the front bench by my ministerial colleague from the Home Office, and I know that he will have listened carefully to what she has had to say, but I'm sure she understands the determination that exists within the department and right across government to tackle the small boat crossings. That is something that we are working at pace to address.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And the Minister's right that those who were engaged in the violence last night should face the full weight of the law, because legally morally and politically they were wrong. However, if the law is going to apply to those who protested, it should also be applied to those who have broken into our country illegally, have broken our immigration laws, and are then become the source of many of the problems which we face. But instead, they're taken by the hand. They have state resources spent on them. They have got accommodation made available to them. And then they're given the right to stay here, even though they've come in illegally. And if this issue is to be addressed, then the government must change its attitude. Those who come into our country illegally should be told, you will never get asylum. And the Irish government should be spoken to as well, so that the Irish Republic does not become the conduit for illegal immigration, the route which was used by the person who has now been accused of this crime.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course the law should always be applied without fear or favour. And whilst acknowledging the points that he has made, I hope that he understands the determination of this government to address the issues that he has raised. The government has been crystal clear about our commitment to reduce to zero the number of hotels that are being used to accommodate asylum seekers. There is a commitment to do that process in a different way, but through the use of larger sites. And also he will have heard the remarks I made earlier about the increase in the removal of foreign national offenders. So this is a priority for this government, this is a priority for the Home Secretary, and we are working at pace to address the issues that the Honourable Member raises.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The attack on Monday night in Belfast was horrific, and the scenes last night terrifying. It is understandable that people are seeking answers, and that yet again another horrific crime is facing public scrutiny and political debate. One of the challenges is that right now people are finding those answers online and in that toxic world of social media. Now, we can either feed that tension it is creating, or we can dispel it by standing together against those who wish to target entire communities and being committed to replacing the fictions with fact. I know the Home Secretary and the Minister have been looking at this issue. What more can we do to help people have access to trusted sources of information when it comes to difficult issues like this, so that we can challenge those people who spread hatred, leading from this place and delivering to those communities affected the information they need to be able to help heal themselves and deal with the trauma of what they've seen?
Well, I think the Honourable Member raises a very important point. I think there will be agreement and recognition that activity online can provide extraordinary opportunities and benefits, but clearly it can also provide a toxic environment which drives the kind of criminality that we've seen in recent times. I hope that she will understand that the government is working at pace across government through the Defending Democracy Task Force and working with colleagues in DCIT, DCMS and right across law enforcement and with operational partners to make sure that activity online is monitored in a way that will best enable us to reduce and eliminate the kind of activity that she refers to. She will understand that that is not an easy thing to do, and we are constantly looking for greater responsibilities to be exercised by the social media companies and by the tech companies. But I give her an assurance of the importance that we attach to these matters. I've had meetings recently with ministerial colleagues to look at what more we can do, so I assure her that we're looking carefully at what more we can do.
Sir Julian.
Does the Security Minister share my concern that irrespective of the personal motivation of this perpetrator, the circumstances by which he came into this country sends a signal to those ideological movements abroad that wish us harm, that there is a very easy back door by which they can infiltrate this country. And if an operation of that sort is mounted in the future, what sort of violent response will there be to a spectacular terrorist attack that could and should have been prevented by secure borders?
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman, as he always does, has raised a very thoughtful series of questions, and whilst I know that he will understand, I'm not going to get into the detail of the potential motivations of the alleged offender in these particular circumstances. I think the general challenge that he raises is the right one. It's the job of this government, of any government, to ensure that the United Kingdom is the hardest possible target for our adversaries and for those who would do us harm. Now, from his previous service on the ISC, he knows a lot about the nature and the range of threats that as a country we face. I hope that he also knows that this government, like the last government, does everything it possibly can to make sure that where there are particular points of vulnerability, we are bearing down on those and that we have the right capabilities, the right resources in place to ensure that we keep the public safe. There is no more important duty of any government than being able to do that. And that is what myself as the Security Minister, working with my colleagues across government, spend each hour of every day making sure that we do.
Mr. Speaker, the crime committed was horrific and the violence in response has been appalling. And many of my constituents are deeply concerned at seeing what looks like a racially motivated attacks on families. They are feeling more scared in my community. So can I seek reassurances from the Minister that we will continue to stand together to reject extremism and violence and support those who work together to continue to maintain a safe, tolerant and united community both in Northern Ireland and across the United Kingdom?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I absolutely can provide those assurances. The Honourable Lady is absolutely right to make the points that she does it in the way that she does. It's at moments like this where we are collectively tested, and the test is whether we are prepared to stand together against the kind of horrific violence that we've seen, both in terms of the initial attack and the response to it, and whether we are prepared to stand together and reject extremism. That isn't about seeking to in any way minimise the horror of the scenes that we've seen. But the job of government is to provide a grown-up, balanced response that seeks to bring communities together, not drive them apart. And that will always be the response of this government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy birthday to you. The Minister said to criminals, who are criminals, Minister, not thugs, do not do it. With respect, that won't cut it. It suggests that the government is simply a passive, pearl-clutching observer rather than an active participant in this. Whilst I accept that operational matters are a matter for the PSNI and not for the Minister, will he say what the government is doing to try to fix the fundamentals that underpin this dreadful situation in Belfast?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've got a huge amount of respect for the right honourable gentleman, but I think his characterisation of the words that I used in my opening remarks is unfair, not least because I was seeking to provide a degree of clarity to those in Northern Ireland who might find themselves swept along by some of the violence that we've seen in recent times. I think it is entirely reasonable that as a government minister there is a clarity about the message that I send to those people, which is they shouldn't do it. And if they do decide that they want to do it, then they have to be prepared to face the full consequences of their criminality. Now, I think, with great respect to him, I think that is not an unreasonable point to make. His second point was a kind of sort of wider systemic point. I know that he will understand that the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is an extraordinarily seasoned political operator who dedicates his service in this House to serving the people of Northern Ireland as the Secretary of State. And I know that honourable members right across the House will understand how seriously he takes these matters. But the honourable gentleman is also right to infer that this is a shared endeavour across government. And that's why we will make sure that we will look carefully at what's happened in Northern Ireland and ensure that our collective response is proportionate.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I commend the Honourable Member for South Belfast and Mid Down for her words in this place. My constituents in Birmingham Northfield will have been horrified by last night's scenes in Belfast, just as they will have been by the attacks on police in Southampton. Both followed horrifying individual incidents which were subsequently exploited for extremist political ends, including online, as she said. The only difference between shouting something through a megaphone and posting it on social media is the latter might reach millions. So what consequences will be faced by those who do meet the threshold for encouraging acts of criminality, including online?
Well, I'm grateful to him, and I think he's also right to raise concerns about the disturbances and the disorder that we saw in Southampton recently. The scenes both in Southampton and Belfast, and of course we've seen them in other parts of the United Kingdom, are utterly abhorrent. It is extremely kind of ridiculous for those people who participate in that kind of criminality to sometimes describe themselves as being patriots. They're not patriots. They don't believe in our country. They want to undermine our country. The real patriots are those people in the police force dealing with this disorder, dealing with this criminality. And to come to his second point, I can absolutely give him an assurance that those who do decide that they want to engage in this violent criminal disorder will face the full weight of the law.
Gavin Robinson.
I'm extremely grateful to you and to the Minister for his condemnation, and to the member for Belfast South and Mid Down for securing another opportunity to raise these important issues. The condemnation has been strong, and the condemnation has been appropriate from the Minister. He is also right to highlight that you cannot protect British values whilst tarnishing them and trampling upon them and destroying the rule of law and intimidating members of our community and putting them out of their homes and destroying their lives. That's not British, and that's not what we need in our country. But as Security Minister, he has a number of responsibilities, and I would urge him to have a look at the swift processes that were deployed 3 years ago on asylum applications. I understand that an individual in question was most likely not even interviewed as part of that asylum process, given the constrained timescales within it. That individuals just give a name and a date of birth, and there's no database upon which to confirm that the name and the date of birth that they gave is true. And without making any comment on the individual in question on Monday, that is a huge loophole in the security of our nation. There is a need to engage with the Government of the Republic of Ireland and ensure that we have uniformity and uniformity of protection of our borders. And I would ask him to commit to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Very grateful to the right honourable gentleman, and I thought he made excellent points at the beginning of his remarks with regard to the activities we've seen and them not being British. I completely agree with his analysis of the situation, and I hope that he acknowledges my very long-standing interest and affection for his part of the United Kingdom. And lots of right honourable and honourable members feel a huge sense of determination to support him and his colleagues in the important work that they are doing. He raised a number of other points, and I know that he will understand that I'm joined by my ministerial colleague who is listening very carefully to the points that he has made. Of course, when a situation such as the one we've seen in recent days occurs, the department will want to look very carefully at the circumstances of that particular case. In general terms, some of the metrics relating to some of the points that he has made are absolutely heading in the right direction, not least in terms of initial decisions on asylum being up by 71%, and the government's absolute determination to make sure that we're processing claims much more quickly and much more effectively than was the case previously. But I think the right honourable gentleman makes a whole series of points. We will consider them further, and of course, should he wish to discuss them, I'd be very happy to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I echo the remarks and the statement from the Minister, and also my friend, the member for Belfast South and Mid Down, who spoke with so well and with such clarity. This was a horrific attack, and I'd like to join others in extending my sympathies with the victim. I'd also like to commend the bravery of Matt McKinnon and those who ran towards danger to disarm the attacker, and the PSNI and emergency services for their swift response. But can I also say it was disappointing, but not surprising, to see the usual suspects using this as an opportunity to divide and point score and help to whip up violence and disorder online, which then plays out on the streets of Belfast. Will he join me in condemning those who have done so, and does he agree this demonstrates the need for urgent action against the online platforms that facilitate and spread this hate?
Well, I'm very grateful to him, not least because I know that he also has a very long-standing affection for Northern Ireland, and I completely join with him in praising the bravery of all of those involved a couple of nights ago in terms of the actions that we saw. I think he's also right to raise very significant concerns, and it links to the point that I made earlier on about words having consequences. Whilst there will be, as he describes them, the usual suspects coming forward to try and derive some kind of political advantage from circumstances such as this, I genuinely believe that the majority of the public expect us to act in a sensible, consensual way to address the problems about which people are rightly angry, but to do that in a way that brings people together, not drive them apart.
Mr. Speaker, in my 25 years as a Member of Parliament, I never thought I would ever see a situation where masked men would go door to door seeking to drive families from ethnic minorities out of their home. Now, what happened on Monday was truly barbaric, but there is nothing in the world that would ever justify that type of behaviour. Now, I and others in this House have been warning about the rise of the far right and those pernicious people who would influence this type of behaviour on our streets. Will he now acknowledge that we have a new emerging problem with elements of the far right? Will he acknowledge that? And will he therefore then commit to ensure that we tackle it effectively?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I agree with the Honourable Member. The scenes that he described were utterly abhorrent and were not the scenes that any right-minded person would ever want to see anywhere, in Belfast or the United Kingdom or anywhere. And I hope that there is a shared sense of agreement about that. In terms of his second point, of course I acknowledge, as the Security Minister, that in order to keep our country safe, we have to deal with a range of different threats that sit across the spectrum. Of course, that includes extreme right-wing activity, as it includes a range of other specific threats. In truth, my approach is always to be ideologically agnostic, in the sense that it doesn't make a difference to me what the particular motivation or the ideology of those who would do us harm is. I will make sure that we've got the defences to stand against those threats, regardless of where they come from.
Alex Houston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to take the opportunity to condemn the appalling assault on the gentleman on Monday night and to praise the members of the public, the PSNI and emergency services for stepping in and trying to help that individual. I would also like to put on the record that I condemn the violence that took place last night. There is no place for violence in our society, no matter what the issue. It is just wrong. However, Minister, I do have some issues. We've raised issues about police resources for the PSNI. It's not a matter that the PSNI might need resources, they urgently need help and support. We are over 1,000 police officers down in Northern Ireland, and I would urge you to send support as quickly as possible. We also have, Minister, the problem of an open border, and I know the member for South Belfast has mentioned that. That is a back door for illegal immigration into Northern Ireland. Would the Minister be able to provide us with figures how many people are using that back door and what plans the government are going to do to close that? And finally, many decent law-abiding people have genuine concerns about illegal immigration, and they feel that this government and politicians are letting them down. What can the Minister do and government do to try and assure those people that their genuine concerns are being taken seriously and are going to be resolved? Thank you.
I'm grateful to him for his condemnation of the violence and the words that he said in praise of those who've acted with great courage. I understand the points that he makes about PSNI resources. These are matters that I have twice previously discussed with the Chief Constable in Northern Ireland, and I'm quite certain that my Right Honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, will be having further conversations with the Chief Constable today and on an ongoing basis. I do recognise the concerns that he's raised, and I know that the Secretary of State and colleagues across government will want to reflect on them further in light of recent events. I thought he also made an important point about the common travel area. The common travel area, as he will know, is without border controls, and this has been the case for many years. So currently this is not data that can be collected. However, we do have immigration enforcement teams who conduct intelligence-led raids, and we have a new data sharing agreement between the UK government, local authorities and PSNI to protect the CTA from abuse. But we'll look very carefully at the points that he has raised, and I know that there will be further colleagues with ministerial colleagues about them.
Annie Croker.
Of course, rioting is utterly wrong, and the scenes we saw in Belfast yesterday deserve our total condemnation. But law-abiding people across the country are rightly furious at the failure of the government to stop dangerous and violent men entering our country illegally. One reason is the pull factor of our asylum and welfare system. The other factor is the open border that we have with the Republic. And I stood on that border last week, Mr. Speaker, and of course nobody wants to see physical infrastructure erected there. But what conversations is the Minister having with the Irish government to get them to do more to stop illegal migrants travelling north into the UK?
Well, I am grateful for the condemnation of the violent behaviour that we saw. I think it's right that we all do that, of course, and don't allow any ambiguity in terms of the words that we use in that regard. He'll understand that I don't share the particular critique that he's offered of the government in recent times, not least because the number of foreign national offenders who've been deported is up by 36%. So that's more than 10,000 that have been deported since this government came to office. He raised specific concerns about the common travel area. I can say that we work closely with the Irish government to protect the integrity and the security of the common travel area, whilst at the same time preserving the rights of British and Irish citizens. But where there is a requirement for us to do more, then of course we'll have to look at that.
In January, I wrote to the Home Secretary because a whistleblower suggested that Border Force lacked sufficient personnel to cover night sailings from Belfast and Larne to my constituency of Fleece and Galloway, where Cairn Ryan is the main port. We've heard today that much more focus is on what is clearly the unlocked back door to the United Kingdom between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. What can the government do to address this and turn to prevent the North Channel between Scotland and Northern Ireland becoming a conduit for illegals and for other contraband?
Well, I'm grateful to him because I think he makes an important point. I met with officials this morning specifically to discuss the points that he has raised. Of course, we will use all of the tools that we have at our disposal to address the points that he raises, including intelligence-led operations. But we look very closely at these things, and where there is a requirement for us to do more, then we will do so.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady from South Belfast for the question, and also for the Security Minister for the way in which he's responded, so characteristically serious and thoughtful. It strikes me that there are three lines of investigation here. One, of course, into the abhorrent act on Monday night, and we have a suspect. Secondly, the disorder that we saw last night, and I heard the Minister say that we have 3 people arrested as suspects there. But there is a third strand around those who seek to incite violence. Can the Minister confirm that that is a third strand of active investigation, that we are seeking to find those people who incited that violence last night, and continue to do so?
Well, I think the Honourable Member makes an important point. I agree with the characterisation that he has made. He's right to reference the attack and the subsequent disorder, but he's also right to reference concerns about those who would seek to initiate violent criminality under these particular circumstances. I give him an absolute assurance that these are matters that we will take incredibly seriously, as I am sure will the police.
Gregory Capp.
Speaker, rightly there's been unanimous condemnation of the violence last night in Belfast, as there was for the incident that occurred in North Belfast, the precipitated protest last night. But would he agree with me that 2 years ago, following the Southport attacks, there was similar violence to last night appeared in Northern Ireland? We all condemned that as well. I asked the Deputy First Minister to accompany me to our local hospital to reassure ethnic minority workers in that hospital that we didn't just condemn violence against them, but we stood shoulder to shoulder with them in opposition to that violence. But we need more than just words and standing shoulder to shoulder. We hope there will never be a repeat of last night's violence. But if the government don't deal with the fundamental underlying problem of the previous night, we will have more nights like that one.
Well, I'm grateful to him, not least because it provides me with the opportunity to make the point that I know that he will agree with, that Belfast is a truly great city. It is a place with incredible history and extraordinary character, and I believe it is a place of great potential and possibilities with a very, very bright future ahead of it. And that is why it is so tragic to see the kind of criminal disorder that all of us, I think, would have hoped had been consigned to the past. So I understand the passion with which the honourable gentleman speaks, but I hope that he will also understand the commitment that exists from this government to deal with what he describes as being the kind of fundamental underlying problems. He's right to raise those. Nobody is remotely blind to them, and we completely understand the anger. And that is why we are progressing from the Home Office and working with colleagues right across law enforcement and government to make sure that we are making progress with the areas that he references.
Mr. Speaker, all that last night's dreadful violence did was terrorise the innocent, self-inflict harm on their own communities, and distract from the awfulness of the North Belfast attack, and indeed distract from the many peaceful protests that there were in my constituency and elsewhere. And on all these issues, the law must take its full course against all illegality wheresoever it came from. But the deadly impact of the continuing open border with the Republic of Ireland for illegal migrants still stands. This government presides over a situation where it is illegal to bring into Northern Ireland a garden plant from Great Britain, but yet we have an open border from the Irish Republic where gentlemen like this Sudanese man can come unhindered, an illegal immigrant, into the United Kingdom. Does the Minister not see the problem?
Well, I certainly agreed with the honourable gentleman's framing of his question, and also the point that he actually made about peaceful protest. I know he will understand that my remarks referred only to those engaging in criminal disorder. I've heard the points that he's made about what he describes as an open border. He will have heard the comments that I've made previously, including the point about the very close cooperation that takes place between the Irish Police, PSNI and other police services to ensure that there is the most joined up and effective response. But I accept the challenge that he makes, and I accept that this is something that the government is and will need to continue to look at.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House owes a big debt of thanks to the member for Belfast South and Mid Down for raising this question today. Last night, the scenes of racist violence on the streets of Belfast, gangs going door to door looking for foreigners, and the racist abuse being thrown at any minority ethnic person on the streets of Belfast last night were utterly disgusting, as were the attempts by people in Glasgow and Liverpool last night to emulate that and do exactly the same. What message has he got for the far-right racists that are encouraged by parties represented in this House that they will not be allowed to assemble in the next few days and over the weekend to promote the same kind of racist language and violence against minorities within our society? None of this racist stuff builds a house, feeds a child, or educates anybody. Surely what we need to do is unite people together against racism in any form in our society.
Hear, hear.
Well, I completely agree with the right honourable gentleman. I think he made his point very powerfully. My message is very simple to those who would consider any kind of racist activity or any further criminality or disorder. My message is very simple. Break the law and get ready to face the full consequences of the law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I first of all thank the Minister for his thoughtful answers? I think they're helpful for us who ask questions. I condemn totally the violence that took place in Belfast. Yesterday I stood in this place, in this House, and spoke on the right to peacefully protest and to have their government take account of their fears and their views. And as the MP for Strangford, not one stone was thrown at by the hundreds and hundreds of people who stood by the cenotaph in Newton Ards last night, as women in Zimmer frames, young mothers with children and families stood in companionable silence. The PSNI have confirmed that no thuggery whatsoever took place. They did what they needed to do to have their voice heard. Now it's time for government, Minister, it's time for government to do what they need to do and listen and act to the decent and reasonable people who are not thugs and who have valid fear. So will the Minister confirm that the views of these and those reasonable thousands throughout the province who quietly ask for their voice to be heard will not be ignored due to the loud actions of some terrible thugs?
Mr. Speaker, I completely agree with my honourable friend. I think he makes his points in the way that he does very powerfully and with huge experience of these matters. I completely agree with his central point, which is that we must not allow the violent criminality and disorder that we have seen to drown out the important but peaceful voices of those who entirely understandably have concerns and express anger about the situation that we have seen. He's right to make that point, and I give him an absolute assurance of the seriousness with which we take it.
Calm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I offer you a happy birthday? I forgot to do that during Prime Minister's question time. Can I also thank the Honourable Member for Belfast South and Mid Down for a very balanced statement to this House. Of course, we recognise and commend the efforts of the individuals that intervened on Monday to help the victim and the emergency services, which no doubt were confronted with very challenging scenes last night. My question is very simple. Will the Minister be looking at special courts to expedite matters where we have rioters with harsh sentences so as to act as a deterrence?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to him for the point that he raises. I think he will understand that his question doesn't sit within my ministerial area of responsibility, but I know colleagues elsewhere in government will have heard it, and I'll make sure that he gets a response from them about it.
Mr. Speaker, the victim, Stephen Ogilvie, is actually a health service worker, a radiographer, and our health service across the United Kingdom, and especially in Northern Ireland, depends on many people working from many nationalities, many communities. So it was abhorrent to see some of those health service workers actually attacked last night by those contemplating and delivering this violence. Can I ask the Minister, what steps is he taking to ensure that all authorities in Northern Ireland have the full support of this government in any action that is needed to be taken against those who are perpetrating the violence, but also those who are acting online to spread the hatred and the violence that we are now seeing? My party leader spoke this morning with the father of the victim, who has made a direct appeal to those spreading disinformation online to stop. And that actually includes the disinformation that his son has died. So what steps can the government take to support the family and the father in their asks?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. He's absolutely right to raise concerns, which I think will be shared across the House, about the attacks that took place on health service workers, whom we owe a huge debt of gratitude for their incredible work. He's also right to raise concerns about activity taking place online, and as I said in an earlier response, that is something we take very seriously and work across government on. I think it's important for me to reiterate that both the Secretary of State and the Parliamentary Under-Secretary from the Northern Ireland office are both in Northern Ireland today. I know that they will be talking to colleagues, and I know that they will be consulting widely across this place to make sure that the support that we provide is proportionate, and where there is more that we need to do to help, then I know that the government's door will be open to that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The pogroms we witnessed last night should shock the nation. They were horrific in every sense and are bound to have left minority communities across the country terrified. We saw widespread scenes of violent disorder, homes ablaze, and reports of people's cars being stopped and checked on the basis of race. The depraved scenes of violence that triggered the eruptions last night were also absolutely horrific and understandably invoked anger. These are scenes more reminiscent of the darkest chapters of history than modern Britain. We must be honest, something is profoundly wrong. Why is it that isolated incidents are repeatedly followed by such extreme and widespread eruptions of violence? And what failures of policy and governance over the decades have brought us to this point where anger and vulnerability have become so dangerously heightened and so easily exploited?
Listen very carefully to the points that the honourable gentleman made. That there were a number of them. Let me reflect on them, and I'm very happy to discuss them with him further.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for your permission to speak. Having had violence in my constituency last night, I want to say clearly, violence is never the answer and is wrong, and those engaged in that should face the full force of the law. Despite what Sinn Féin tell us, there was always an alternative to violence. We do not want attacks on people, place, homes or businesses. We don't want families feeling unsafe, little children from different ethnic backgrounds feeling afraid or fearful even to go to school. But for the many who are angry and who are scared because of uncontrolled immigration, because of the most barbaric act and footage that has been displayed of the incident just 2 nights ago, people want to see politics and democracy fill the space. So there is significant concern in Northern Ireland about open borders. Will he release the numbers who have crossed into the UK via the Republic of Ireland border? And will the Minister commit, even at a start, to start replicating what ROI do in checking people coming from the United Kingdom, from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland? People need to see this government take action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to her for her condemnation, and let me say to her that the government do absolutely understand the concerns and are working to address the underlying issues that underpin those concerns. I mean, I think it's important to make the point that on top of increased deportations and removals, we're also seeking to remove the pull factors that would bring people here in the first place. So illegal work arrests are up by 60%. Hotel use is down by 63% since its peak, and asylum claims down by 12%. Much done, much more to do, but absolutely we do understand the concerns.
Speaker, and I joined the House in thanking the member for Belfast South and Mid Down for this UQ and her remarks. And I also associate myself with the condemnation from across the House for the abhorrent attack on Monday evening and the scenes that we witnessed yesterday. A pastor at the scene where multiple houses were on fire in North Belfast said people were being put out of houses because they're black. According to media reports, even a 2-month-old baby had to be evacuated by police to safety last night amidst mob violence and rioting in Belfast. That is the reality of what this violence represents. Not legitimate protest, but terrorising innocent families. This is where far-right rhetoric takes us, to pogroms that force police to escort children from their homes. We know from history where this road leads, to a path of destruction and division. So can the Minister tell this House what the government is doing to counter the spread of racism and to ensure that one individual's actions are not used to stigmatise entire communities?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's absolutely right to say that the scenes that we saw are appalling and unacceptable and are in no way legitimate protest. I hope that I was crystal clear in my opening remarks about what my message was to those who may be considering, or maybe those who've been involved in this kind of violent criminality and disorder. I was crystal clear about the fact that they shouldn't do that, and that anybody who considers doing it needs to be prepared to face the full weight of the law. I'm confident that the police are working at pace to address the scenes that we've seen in recent times. Arrests have already been made, and I have no doubt that we will see further arrests in the very near future. This kind of criminality and disorder is utterly unacceptable.
Adam. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all condemn the actions on Monday night, and we also look with concern at the subsequent rioters. But my concern is those that leave the land, possible for such actions to happen. Those that politicise, those that weaponise. Mr. Speaker, when I was younger, in the 70s, if somebody was going to attack me for racial reasons, which did happen, you could spot them from a mile away. Now those that instigate racial hatred, wear smart suits, speak the King's English, occupy every radio wave and every television channel, instigating hate. I would like to ask the Minister that we seem to have a repeated measures of this. At Southport, the Liverpool fans who were run over, the Huntingdon stabbing in the train. People are looking at crime through a lens of racialisation. But many people in this chamber have spoken today in unity as we commemorate 10 years of Joe Cox, speaking about what unites us rather than divides us. So can I ask the Minister to maybe consider a cross-member, cross-party task force to tackle this issue, which is going to affect every single member of our community?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to the honourable member. I think he makes some very important points, and I think he makes them in a very considered and constructive way. He's right to make the point that words have consequences, and where people stoke the fire, where people seek to incite violent criminality, they should take responsibility and they should be held responsible for their actions. I think that this has been a very constructive and reasonable debate that we've had in the House today. But I think it is particularly for those online to think carefully about the words that they use and the messages deploy. All of us who serve in public life have an absolute responsibility, I think, to do the right thing, to ensure that people act within the law and to work to bring people together, not drive them apart.
Right, that completes questions led from bench changeover. Obviously, we're going to come to the statement, but I have got concern. There are strong rumours that the government is going to produce its defence investment plan on Friday. That will be an utter disgrace and an utter kick in the face to the members of this House. I would say to Downing Street, government's responsibility of the Ministerial Code states major announcements should be made here. Once again, this may be speculation, and I'm sure it will be corrected. But I will be appalled if it is done on a Friday when members have been waiting so long. This is all parties, including the government benches, who have great interest in the defence plan. We all have jobs. We all have people who serve in the armed forces. So surely we must end this speculation and treat this House with the respect that members were elected here to. Once again, it seems to me we are becoming second-class citizens with the government. I don't want that to be the case, and I hope that I'm going to be proved wrong. Right, let us come to the urgent question. Chef Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Defence if he will make a statement on the Defence Investment Plan.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister set out today at Prime Minister's Questions and the Defence Secretary outlined just last week, we will publish the Defence Investment Plan ahead of the NATO summit in just a few weeks' time. The Prime Minister, the Defence Secretary and all the Defence team are determined to get the DIP right, to ensure we deliver the best equipment and technology into the hands of our frontline forces, investing in and growing the UK economy. We're determined to make the right choices for the country, to ensure the UK is secure at home and strong abroad. Even as we finalise the DIP, we continue to back British jobs, British businesses and British innovation. Since July 2024, the government has now signed 1,400 major contracts, with 94% of that going in terms of spend going to UK-based firms. In just the past 4 weeks, we've announced a £115 million hybrid Navy package for the UK-led mission in the Strait of Hormuz, a £1 billion contract for new mobile artillery for the British Army, rapidly procured new weapons for our Typhoons, already deployed to shoot down drones at low cost, 13 new contracts up to £4 million each, with small homegrown British businesses to foster growth and innovation and to find the next £1 billion UK defence unicorn. An Armed Forces pay award of 3.6%, meaning most personnel have now received a cumulative pay award of 14.1% since this Labour government was formed. And let's not forget, it was the party opposite that left the defence programme overcommitted, underfunded and unsuited to the threats we now face. In their first year in government, they cut defence spending by £2 billion. In their first 5 years of government, cut by £12 billion. This Labour government is rearming and renewing our armed forces and ending the Tory hollowing out, spending over £11 billion more this year on defence than the last year of the Conservative government. Our defence investment plan, delivering our strategic defence review, will put that right. Backed by our commitment to the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, backed by the most ambitious programme of defence reform in 50 years, we will deliver for Britain, deliver for defence.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful to Mr Speaker for granting this urgent question. Before I begin, may I pay tribute to the 3 Royal Navy personnel who tragically died in a helicopter crash last week, and we offer our heartfelt condolences to the families from this side of the House. Now, after months of delay, Madam Deputy Speaker, there has been very considerable speculation that the Defence Investment Plan will finally be delivered this week. Is that the case? Specifically, and to echo what Mr Speaker just said, there has also been considerable speculation that the DIP may be published on Friday. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Mr Speaker said, this House is not sitting on Friday. Let's be clear, with war on 2 fronts, this is not just another government publication, but given the context, a vital moment for our country and for this Parliament. So does the Minister understand that it would be totally unacceptable to all colleagues if the Defence Investment Plan was published on a day when the House is not sitting?
Bigger sign you don't back your own plan.
So can he explicitly confirm when he gets up that the Defence Investment Plan will be published when the House is sitting? Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, you need no reminding of the total shambles in this chamber last June when Labour published their Strategic Defence Review, giving advance sight of the market-sensitive document to the defence industry from 8 a.m. that morning, while I, as Shadow Defence Secretary, never got to see a copy before responding to it from this dispatch box. So can the Minister also give all colleagues on all sides an absolute assurance that whenever the DIP is published, before the actual document itself is shared with any other external stakeholders, first sight will be reserved for members of this House? Madam Deputy Speaker, there's a reason the DIP has been delayed so long, and that's because Labour still haven't worked out how to pay for it. But former Labour Defence Secretary George Robertson and their former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair both know the answer. They should cut welfare to fund defence. So if the Minister disagrees and believes the welfare budget should not be touched to fund defence, can he at least tell us if the Defence Investment Plan will set out a fully funded path to 3% of GDP on defence? And crucially, has the Treasury actually signed off the Defence Investment Plan yet? Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, last week the Secretary of State said at Defence Orals that the Prime Minister was determined to publish the Defence Investment Plan by the NATO summit, which begs the following question. Which NATO summit and which Prime Minister?
Can I join the honourable gentleman in passing on my personal condolences? As a Devon MP, the helicopter crash in Devon hit my military city that I represent very hard, as someone that comes from a Royal Navy family and knows many people who fly similar helicopters, and I welcome the cross-party support for the families and the victims. He asked when the DIP will be published. As the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary has said, it will be published before the NATO summit in only a few weeks' time. The few weeks' time piece should have answered his final question, but I understand he wanted to get that for his social media clip, so perhaps instead of knowing the answer, he would already have it. He also will know that the SDR wasn't market sensitive, and so when he said that, that's not actually correct. But we will be very clear that we are investing more in defence. We're ending the hollowing out and underfunding that his government presided over. We're very clear it will be published before the NATO summit. And I know He can keep chuntering, but I'm trying to answer his questions. He had an opportunity to ask them. Let me have a go at trying to do them. As he's choosing not to do that, spending decisions are made by the Prime Minister. Spending decisions, he's still chuntering, it's not good. Spending decisions will be made by the Prime Minister and the Chancellor in the usual way as affecting any government department, including defence, and will publish the Defence Investment Plan before the NATO summit.
Select Committee Chair Tamsin Dessy.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I associate myself with the comments of the Minister and the Shadow Defence Secretary, and my heartfelt condolences and sympathies with the families of our brave service personnel who have sadly perished. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Strategic Defence Review set the ambition, but the Defence Investment Plan is supposed to say what will actually be published, what will actually be funded, when and with what trade-offs. So can the Minister confirm that when the Defence Investment Plan is finally announced, that it will be in this chamber to enable proper parliamentary scrutiny, and that it will contain all the details that honourable members, the British taxpayers and industry expect from an investment plan, rather than just a headline figure, some headline commitments and a few aspirations.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for the work that he does for Defence and the work that he does on the Defence Select Committee. He knows that the commitment that the Defence Secretary made from this dispatch box to publish it before the NATO summit will be honoured. When it comes to the details of the plan, we've committed to go beyond the equipment programmes that we inherited previously. So the equipment plans that were published by the last government only dealt with equipment. And as he will know, 47 of the 49 major defence programmes we inherited were delayed and over budget at the point of the general election. He will also know that 30% or so of the equipment plan was unfunded, and many of them unsuitable for the threats that we are facing. And so that's why the Defence Investment Plan will go beyond just the equipment and deal with people, estates and infrastructure as well as deal with the reform. I'm absolutely certain that he will have heard the commitments given by the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary, and I look forward to the debates in this House on the Defence Investment Plan when it's published.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Dr Alpington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I associate myself and my colleagues with the condolences that have been paid to the crew who died in the tragic helicopter crash last week. The Defence Investment Plan is still not published. After 9 months, industry waits for certainty, our allies for clarity, and our armed forces for the investment they were promised. At a time of acute threat, defence cannot be switched on overnight. You cannot rebuild industrial capacity, train personnel, modernise equipment or restore deterrence through vague promises about working at pace. SMEs are clear, investment decisions are delayed, expansion is on hold, our contracts are being lost overseas. British firms stand ready to grow and hire, but this delay is freezing procurement, paralysing the supply chain and creating doubt about Britain's commitment to rearmament. Will the Secretary of State confirm whether he has assessed the economic damage caused to British businesses by the delayed Defence Investment Plan? And given the deadlock that appears to exist between the Treasury and the MOD, will he now seriously consider our proposal to issue £20 billion of defence bonds?
Well, can I thank him for his questions and also for the condolences on behalf of his party. It's polite of him to promote me in his question, but I'll make sure the Secretary of State has heard what he has to say. It's really important that we set out that we haven't waited for the Defence Investment Plan to deliver the new capabilities, the new contracts and the new investment. And so that's why, for instance, he mentioned small businesses. Earlier this year, we stood up the Defence Office of Small Business Growth to create a single doorway for small businesses to be able to access defence. We've supported more small businesses, and we've increased the target for direct spend from the Ministry of Defence to increase by 50%, an extra £2.5 billion of direct spend going into small businesses. We continue to support SMEs. So the 1,400 major contracts that I mentioned in my response to the initial question not only support companies like BAE Systems, Babcock, Thales, the very large defence primes, they also support the entire supply chain, with many of those contracts going to small businesses, because we want to see the innovation, the job creation, the energy and dynamism of small businesses have a bigger role in defence, and that is especially true if you look at the areas like autonomy, where many of the companies that we are indeed buying capabilities of today are small businesses, have huge growth potential, and he will see when the Defence Investment Plan is published that we're backing those innovative companies and those SMEs.
Luke Akehurst.
Thank you, Madam Deputy
Speaker, would my honourable friend agree that the decision that was taken early in this Parliament to halve the overseas aid budget and put that into defence shows that this Labour government is prepared to take the tough political decisions needed to fund rearming this country, unlike the party opposite, who had 14 years to invest in the armed forces and instead left them and their equipment in the parlous state that we found in 2024?
Can I thank my friend for his question? He's absolutely right, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the difficult decision made to move 0.2% of GNI being spent on international aid to defence spending was an important decision that showed that in this new era of hard power, we need to back it with increased spending of defence, increased capabilities. That's precisely the decision that was taken in the past. We are increasing defence funding. Very proud, compared to the party opposite that cut defence spending in their first budget, we increased defence spending in the first Labour budget.
Yeah. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's really pretty extraordinary to see the partisan way with which the Minister has approached every single question here. He has been completely incapable of giving this House, or indeed Mr Speaker, the assurance that has been asked for on multiple occasions, which can only lead us to assume that he's hiding the untruth that he wishes he didn't have to say, which is that he will not be bringing the Defence Investment Plan to this House. Now, that's pretty extraordinary. It's not just 1 year, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's 14 years, because this government claims that we had 14 years in which we made errors, and they may be right on many of them. In fact, I have criticised them myself. They had 14 years to plan and have now had 2 years in government, and we are nowhere. And we are still seeing defence capability fall. In fact, NATO puts us at number 31 out of 32 of those who have failed to meet their capability targets, and the last one is Iceland, and it doesn't even have a military.
Well, I have a lot of time for the right honourable gentleman, and I enjoy listening to his clips on social media, which I'm sure this will appear very shortly as well. I have to say to him politely,
I don't need such loud chuntering from the front benches. Minister.
I have to say to him politely that when we have military families living in housing with black mould in bedrooms, broken boilers and leaky roofs, the investment that we are making in defence housing is absolutely vital. So when he says that there may have been errors, there certainly were. But defence matters to me as someone that comes from a military family who represents a military constituency. We will be publishing the Defence Investment Plan shortly. What it will show is a Labour government increasing defence spending, ending the hollowing out and underfunding that his government, when he was a minister of, presided over. New capabilities for our armed forces, a stronger Britain in a more dangerous world. But I look forward to seeing the entire answer on his social media, not just his clip.
Mr Tugendhat, you have the luxury of coming in early on this urgent question. Other colleagues would like to be heard as well. Minister, have you finished? Michelle Scroggin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think everybody will know that for quite some time, myself, and I'll agree with what the Chair of the Defence Select Committee has said on the DIP, we've been calling for this to be delivered for quite some time. The urgency needed, not just for our businesses and our patches and the SMEs, that need clarity on where they go with where they invest, is absolutely vital. But what I would just kindly say to the opposition benches that are yelling from sedentary positions, you shouldn't be proud of what you delivered in 14 years. And would, sorry, apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I would just gently say that what we inherited as a government was an absolute bin fire when it comes to defence. And they should be absolutely ashamed of the mess that we were left with. Would the Minister agree that it's absolutely right that the DIP is presented accurately and for what we find ourselves in today, not 3 years ago when the world was a different place?
Can I thank one more friend for her question and also the way that she presented it? She's absolutely right that we need to increase investment, and actually her constituency of Barrow is a really good example of that. The massive increase in employment and people working in the BAE Systems facilities there, building the latest generation of nuclear submarines. The commitment to up to 12 SSNAs being built in Barrow. The huge investment not just in our nuclear deterrent but also our hunter-killer fleet shows that when we get defence defence spending right. When we put the effort into skills and into communities, defence really is an engine for growth, and she will see that writ large when the Defence Investment Plan is published.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we already know that the Defence Secretary is going to make an announcement in Swindon on Friday morning, and given that the Japanese Prime Minister is going to turn up on Saturday, I would suggest that some of that announcement would probably relate to the GCAP funding, given that he's under significant pressure in which to guarantee that the funding and the international contract will be signed immediately. But the issue here is that it won't be the Defence Investment Plan, which is desperately needed. Now, the Minister will know that I speak to defence companies all the time, and over the course of this week, I'm well aware that the government has cancelled tens of millions of pounds worth of contracts in the last few weeks. He talks about signing 1,400 contracts. I would like the Minister to explain how many of those contracts have either timed out or been cancelled since April the 1st.
Well, can I thank him? He asked a number of questions there, which are typically sensible from him. And I look forward to when he sits on the front bench as Shadow Defence Secretary, for the rumours are to be true. But what we say, when it comes to GCAP, we've made very clear our commitment to the Global Combat Air Programme. It's something that the Secretary of State discussed with his partners on the GCAP programme, the Italian and Japanese counterparts, when he was in Singapore only a couple of weekends ago at the Shangri-La conference. We are committed to the GCAP programme. We have signed the first international contract for that, and to deliver that, we'll continue to work with our GCAP partners. I don't have the answers precisely to the questions on top of my head, but I'll be sure to write to him with the answers.
Paul Foster.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's critical to point out that this debate just isn't about funding, it's about the programmes it funds. We must get these programmes right and fit for future needs. In my constituency of South Ribble, many thousands are employed at BAE Systems in Wharton and Samlesbury, who are working diligently not just on ensuring the Typhoon jet remains fit for the future, but also that the Collaborative Combat Aircraft, also known as the Autonomous Jets programme, which will not only secure thousands of jobs in the future, but also keep our country safe. Does the Minister agree we must ensure the Defence Investment Plan is right, not rushed?
Can I thank him for his question? And I've seen for myself the skill and experience of the workers at Salisbury and at Wharton supporting our Typhoon operations, but also building parts for the F-35 programme. What is certainly one of the lessons that we can take from the war in Ukraine, a key learning that was recommended in the Strategic Defence Review, is that we look at the growth of autonomy in particular, and we can see this already in terms of how drones have massively changed the front line, the fighting doctrine, and also the necessary force structure that is required to deter and fight in the 21st century. That's true on land, it is true in the maritime domain, and it is true in the air domain. And a key part of the Defence Investment Plan will be providing the latest technology for our forces, but also support for our industrial base to not only build more of those capabilities in Britain, but make sure that we can export them to our allies as well.
Mike Martin.
Speaker, I'd just like to add my views on the total unacceptability of releasing the Defence Investment Plan when the House is not sitting. As said by my colleague, the Chair of the Defence Committee, the Speaker, the whole House, I think, agrees with that. I would also like to ask the Minister, as well as ruling out publishing the DIP on Friday, also ruling out publishing it next week. After the shambles of the SDR release, the Defence Committee was promised early access to the DIP. Specifically, the DIP was mentioned. The Defence Committee is unavailable next week, so therefore, judging by what was said then by the Secretary of State, they won't be able to release it next week. So can the Minister confirm that it also won't be coming out next week because the Defence Committee is not available?
Well, can I thank him? I'm not sure that's an argument for delaying the DIP further that he was suggesting there, but I understand what he is the argument that he is making. We will publish the DIP before the NATO summit. That's a commitment the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary has made, and we will do that.
Jessica Toll.
Can I welcome the £2.8 million that Bournemouth University has received to develop cyber defence intelligence and autonomous system courses? These are due to start in September and will equip the next generation with the technical skills they need to contribute to the UK's defence capabilities and ensure that we lead on the development of new technologies. So in that context, can the Minister confirm that an increase in defence spending isn't just going to go on kit, it will also be spent on skills, and that universities like mine will continue to be part of our strategy to address the challenges that we face as a nation?
Minister?
Can I thank my honourable friend? She's a real champion for her defence businesses in and around Bournemouth. And I'm really pleased that we were able yesterday to announce the universities and colleges across the country that will receive the uplift in student places with the supplementary places grant that will enhance the skills provision. We've already enhanced the provision of skills for further education with the announcement of 5 DTECs in England, hopefully 2 in Scotland if the Scottish Government will support a second one, and 1 in Wales. We need to go further with more higher education places in defence and defence adjacent courses, and the money that was announced yesterday, not just for Bournemouth but for universities and colleges nationwide, will help support the next generation of talent to work in defence. Good, well-paid, decent jobs.
Caroline David.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just can't understand how it is that the government still has no idea how it's going to pay for the Defence Investment Plan. According to media reports this morning, the dip is likely to be half of the bare minimum that the defence sector says it needs, and that even defence chiefs still haven't seen it. I wonder if the Minister could potentially comment on those media reports. This is against the backdrop of every corner of our armed forces currently being asked to find cuts right now. The pips are squeaking in our armed forces, and our defence employers in my constituency are still in a state of limbo and uncertainty about the future. I've got enormous respect for the Minister, as he knows, but even he must see that this feels like chaos.
I equally have enormous respect for her, which why so politely I disagree with her characterisation of this. I would also politely say, as someone who reads the media speculation on what is in the dip and what discussions have taken place, not always to believe what is written down online.
Speaker, the Defence Investment Plan is to be welcomed, and I also appreciate that it covers more than just equipment to talk about our people and the built estate. He'll know because I've made representations before. I am concerned that since the closure of the local armed forces recruitment centres in towns like Oldham, we have seen recruitment of local young people fall through the floor. In fact, in Oldham, the MOD doesn't even bother to record the numbers because they are now in single digits. But the type of jobs that are being created, these skilled, well-paid, proud jobs, shouldn't be distant for young people growing up in Oldham. And my second point is on procurement is covered, but not disposal. Surely it's got to be the case that every vehicle, every pump, and every generator, every bit of kit that the armed forces don't need, by first refusal, is offered to our friends in Ukraine.
Well, can I thank my friend for his question? He's certainly right that recruitment matters, and that we, as a government, inherited a retention and recruitment crisis from the party opposite. I'm pleased to report to the House that inflow into armed forces is now up 11.6% in the last year. Outflow is now down 8.9%, and morale is now up 3 points just on the last year alone. But he raises a good point about recruitment. I'll be very pleased to arrange a meeting between him and the Minister for Veterans and People that looks after recruitment. But he's also right when it comes to disposals. We work closely with our friends in Ukraine, not just to provide them with the kit and equipment direct from British industry and supporting procurement with our allies as well, but also where we retire UK kit, we look at whether there is a Ukrainian need for that. And so I can reassure him that that is a process that is underway. I continue to speak to my Ukrainian counterparts about the additional support that we can provide for them. That's not just to support the fight tonight, that's also to support the deterrence that Ukraine needs in the future, hopefully when peace arrives, to prevent Putin from ever invading again.
Adam Dawes.
Speaker. We've had some huge wins from defence firms in Yeovil like Leonardo and Honeywell, but lots of other SMEs doing cutting-edge defence work in Yeovil tell me that without the dip they cannot properly plan. So what reassurance can the Minister give Yeovil's defence SMEs that the limbo will end so they can plan investment and provide quality jobs, and will he meet with them to discuss that further?
I have to say to the honourable gentleman, he knows very well that this Labour government has been delivering for Yeovil quite considerably, not just with the £1 billion new medium helicopter contract for Leonardo, not just in terms of our support for Gripen exports that has supported a number of firms in his constituency, not just with the Defence Technical Excellence College that we funded in Yeovil, but with the announcement of the additional places for Yeovil College that we announced yesterday. More places for Yeovil College, more opportunities for young people to study, and there is a growing defence sector in Yeovil that I'm very happy continuing to support, and I look forward to making further announcements, not just for him and Yeovil, but for the rest of the country as well in due course.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a Navy mum, I'd like to associate myself with the Minister's condolences regarding the tragic 3 deaths
of our Navy personnel. Madam Speaker, after 14 years of Tory underinvestment left our armed forces short of people, short of resources and short of morale, yes, and understanding frustrations with the delay, does the Minister agree that the Defence Investment Plan must now deliver the long-term and continue to invest in our personnel and our bases, including Portsmouth Royal Navy Base?
Well, as Devonport's MP, let me say to my Portsmouth colleagues that it is welcome that after many years under the Conservatives, where Devonport and Portsmouth and Faslane were pitched against each other, under a Labour government, we can say confidently that there is work and resources for Devonport, Faslane and Portsmouth. And after a much delay of the investment under the last government, we'll be seeing a multi-billion-pound investment across our naval bases. And the Defence Investment Plan will lay out some of that. I'm very happy meeting her and her Portsmouth colleagues to say not just how we're investing in the kit and capabilities that our Royal Navy needs, but also how we're investing in the military housing, the skills, the support for veterans and the support for cadets in Portsmouth and across the country that we need to really improve our warfighting readiness and make sure that we have the ability to deter aggression but defeat it if necessary.
Committee Chair, Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister will be aware that we published a highly critical report on Sunday of the delay in the Defence Investment Plan. The most important duty of a government is to defend the nation. Under Section 3 of the NATO Articles, it says that. So our constituents want to know whether they're going to be properly defended. The armed forces need to know whether they're going to be properly defended. And above all, our allies need to know when they're going to be properly defended. So why has the Minister been dragged to this House today and not able to tell us when the DIP will be published? When will it be published?
Before the Minister responds, the Honourable Member has far more experience than I do, and we must not be holding up props and booklets and magazines up in the chamber whilst we are speaking. Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is indeed a prop. However, I have read it and I welcome his contributions because I want to see more scrutiny on defence and I want to make sure that we are able to answer that because the issues he raised around Article 3 protections of NATO of homeland defence is a really important one. It's one of the reasons that when I said in my opening remarks that the equipment plan that we inherited was unsuited to defence, it also had gaps in our defence. And what he and others in this House will see when the Defence Investment Plan is published is not only how we're supporting our warfighting ability, our defence of our NATO allies, but also how we're supporting homeland defence. And let me be very clear about homeland defence. Homeland defence is the entirety of the United Kingdom and our overseas territories.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I do thank the Minister for his statement. In Edinburgh South West, I'm proud to have hundreds of people who work in the defence sector. And when I meet and speak with them, they tell me they've never been busier. But what the DIP will provide, of course, is security to them, so they know they can pay their mortgage and think about planning for their kids to go to university. So I do welcome that it will be published soon. But I think what people want to know is, if we publish it now, are we taking on board everything we've learnt from Ukraine? And I think, more importantly, everything we've learnt from Iran, because I think it looks like there's real lessons to be learned from that conflict. And the Minister also mentioned that the previous procurement minister, on his watch, 47 of the 49 projects were neither on time or on budget. Does he know what happened to that, Minister?
I thank him for his question. Well, I sit in his chair now, so that probably helps explain a little bit about what happened with him and the voters. To be fair to him, he was one of the few defence ministers that was re-elected at the last election, with many of them no longer returned to the House. He's right, my old friend, about the importance of long-term security. That's why we're setting out not just the investment in our kit and capabilities, which replaces effectively the equipment plans that were published previously, but also looks at our personnel, the skills and our infrastructure. Because one of the areas that was hollowed out and underfunded consistently as capital was taken from those budgets was our defence estate. We know the scandal of our armed forces housing that many of our constituents were asked to live in, which is something we're addressing with a £9 billion programme. But it was across the we have to look at lessons to improve our personnel and their experience. When it comes to Ukraine, we are in regular dialogue with our friends there, learning the lessons, not just in terms of the kit and capability, how Russia fights, how we deter Russian Russian aggression against NATO allies, but also how we invest in the capabilities that Ukraine needs, but also what lessons we can have. And programmes like Break Stop as a low-cost cruise missile, informed by the work that our friends in Ukraine do, absolutely deliver that. But the lesson I take from Ukraine and Iran is that we'll need more autonomy, more drones, more understanding about mass, as well as exquisite high-end capabilities. We should expect to see more of that in the Defence Investment Plan when it's published.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the extraordinary delays to the Defence Investment Plan have left our armed forces, our defence industry and our allies in limbo. Only in April the Government was warned that they had shown, and I quote, corrosive complacency towards defence, leaving our national security in peril. So does the Minister recognise that these delays are illustrative of this complacency, have given our adversaries the time and opportunity to explore and exploit our weaknesses, and the failure to agree and to fully fund our defence requirements is jeopardising the safety of our citizens?
I don't agree with the honourable gentleman, but I appreciate the way in which he asked it. I think Scotland is an integral part of our national security apparatus, from the aviators that fly from RAF Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland to the submariners that serve from Faslane, as well as the extraordinary number of defence companies, large and small, across Scotland, not just in the Central Belt. There's huge opportunities. I hope that he will continue to pass on to the Scottish Government the importance of signing up for the second Defence Technical Excellence College. I'm still waiting for a reply to my letter that myself and my honourable friend, the Scottish Secretary, wrote to the Scottish Government. We will fund one DTEC in Scotland, and if the Scottish Government can support that initiative with a second one, we can have one in the east and west of Scotland supporting the hugely important defence industries across there. I hope that will be a point where we can find consistent cross-party support, and if we're looking for more cross-party support, can I encourage him and his party to back the brilliant submariners that support our independent nuclear deterrent that sail from Faslane, because it is the independent nuclear deterrent that is the foundation of our national security, and one that will continue to support in the Defence Investment Plan.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Eastside Airport is benefiting from a £173 million MOD contract for Draken. And so, in addition to the contracts the Minister has set out, I think it's fair to say that the Department are not waiting for the Defence Investment Plan to get moving with some of these contracts. But of course, we do need to see the DIP very soon. I think the elephant in the room is that what we're seeing in Ukraine is capabilities advancing and becoming obsolete in a matter of weeks extremely quickly. And so what assurance can the Minister give that when the DIP arrives, it will be flexible in order for the changing nature of warfare in the months and years to come?
Well, can I thank him and also congratulate Teesside on winning additional student places in the announcement that the Defence Secretary made yesterday. He's absolutely right that the fast pace of change means we need to look again at some of the technologies that we're investing in. I already described the equipment plan that we inherited from the Conservatives as unsuited to many of the threats that we face. But also we need to learn the right lessons from Ukraine. And certainly the Strategic Defence Review set out a number of those. But the fast pace of iteration of drones in particular, and the complexity of a GPS EW denied environment along the front line has fundamentally changed, I think, the way that the British Army will need to fight in the future. We've seen some of that change already being announced by the Chief of the General Staff. We'll see further capability announcements in the Defence Investment Plan, but I can reassure him and the House that the lessons from Ukraine and other conflicts around the world we've taken on seriously, because the pace of change in defence is a real one, and we need a procurement system and our fighting doctrine to reflect that pace of change and new technologies.
Mark Pritchard.
More widely on defence procurement, can I turn the Minister's attention to the land mobility programme, and particularly the light mobility vehicle contract? He will know that the Land Rover is retiring after 70 years of faithful service, but can I just encourage him, given that he will know that defence engineers in Shropshire are currently building the Boxer, the Challenger 3 tank, when that contract is looked at, would he come to Shropshire, meet with RBSL, and most importantly, sign the contract in Shropshire?
Minister.
I will take that as good lobbying for one of those contracts. He's certainly right that the Land Rover has given many, many decades of faithful service to the UK Armed Forces. It is no longer suitable for the needs that our military have, and it's right that we now replace it. I announced the beginning of that contract procurement only a few months ago. I've been to RBSL, I've seen the skills that they have there. I'm expecting this to be a well-competed contract, but as the Defence Secretary has set out, we want to see more of our rising defence budget spent with UK UK-based firms, which is something that I'm certain that anyone procuring any contracts from the Ministry of Defence in the future will have one eye on as well.
In room.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, I would like to say it was a great honour to attend Windsor Castle on Friday to see the presentation of the new colours to the Royal Marines. It was an absolutely superb event and carried out to extreme precision. Given that, Madam Deputy Speaker, it has been reported that the Ministry of Defence is considering delaying or scrapping plans for the Type 83 destroyer, the long-term replacement for the Type 45, due in the 2030s. If this is the case, can the Minister confirm what alternative the Government will review to ensure the future of the Royal Marines' anti-aircraft and anti-missile defence?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for mentioning the new colours awarded to the Royal Marines? My honourable colleague, the Minister for the Armed Forces, was there with the King for that ceremony, and it reflects the continuing relevance and importance of the Royal Marines, which will be shown clearly in the Defence Investment Plan. He's asking me about a specific capability proposed by the last government that may be included in the Defence Investment Plan. I hope he will understand that I won't be able to go into that line item description today. However, the broader point about how do we ensure air defence of our naval assets, we've seen from Ukraine that there's new capabilities that can provide elements of that, and we've seen also from the UK response to the Iranian drone threat to our sovereign base areas and our friends in the Republic of Cyprus, that how we create truly layered air defence is a really important lesson we've learned from Ukraine, and that we've applied not just to our sovereign base areas but also naval assets and our friends in the Middle East as well.
Sir Julian Lewis.
May I offer some advice to defence ministers in their bare-knuckle fight with the Treasury for adequate defence funding? They really should move away from this glib spin doctor's line about defence expenditure rising faster than at any time since the end of the Cold War. The situation we're in now is as dangerous as any that took place not at the end of the Cold War when defence expenditure was declining, but at the height of the Cold War. And at the height of the Cold War, Conservative governments, I think with opposition approval, spent regularly between 4.5% and 5% of GDP on defence. So please do not parrot a line that goes way below what we need in the circumstances that we face today.
I have a lot of time for the right honourable gentleman, and he and I have spent many hours, I think, discussing the defence spending that happened, and certainly I'm very aware of the danger that we now face. It's one of the reasons why, as a government, we've decided to declassify a number of those threats facing the United Kingdom. For instance, when the Defence Secretary declassified the activities of the Russian spy ship Yantar over our undersea cables, it was both to explain the threats that we are now facing as a nation, but also to send a very clear signal to Putin that we see what he is doing, and deterrence takes a number of forms, certainly capabilities, but the ability to call out and in doing so restrict the ability of Russia to threaten not just the UK and our allies is an important part, but I understand and take what he says seriously.
Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. People are suffering due to the cost of living crisis, and taxes are at an all-time high. The delayed investment decisions are paralysing planning for defence businesses. They're stuck in limbo. So I wonder if the Minister could explain to me what he is doing to use innovative mechanisms like defence bonds, like the rearmament bank, to support the defence sector and not place additional burdens on the taxpayer.
Minister.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady for her question and the continuing interest that she has in defence, even with her new role in the Liberal Democrats. We are continuing to place contracts with British industry, 1,400 since the general election. We've announced a number of those just in the past few weeks alone, which is seeing jobs growth and is seeing investment, both capital investment in infrastructure, but also in people, in the skills that are required. When it comes to innovative finance, we will set out in the Defence Investment Plan their spending, and she will know that we're increasing defence spending. I welcome a debate around innovations, how we can get more value out of the pounds that we spent. Certainly sending fewer contracts contracts abroad, as was very commonplace under the Conservatives, is something that we've changed now with the Labour government. But I want to see the activation of more private capital to look at how we can support not just the supply chain, but potentially defence capabilities. And that is something we've committed to do with the development of a defence finance and investment strategy, which we are working on currently.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
At a recent defence industry dinner, the Minister informed diners that the definition of British for the purposes of assigning support from the government to British defence industry would be an address in the British Isles, which of course is a complete nonsense. Will the upcoming and much awaited and anticipated defence investment plan clarify what is meant by a British firm for the purposes of government support and advantaging British defence industry?
Minister.
I had thought, Madam Deputy Speaker, for a moment that the right honourable gentleman was listening to my speeches at defence dinners, which I thought I was really pleased about. Unfortunately, he misheard or has not quite got that right. Let me be very clear. UK-based firms that hire people in Britain, that pay their taxes, that invest in skills in Britain, UK-based firms are the ones that we are backing in the Defence Investment Plan. I'm not interested in brass plaques. I'm not interested in that. Where we have to send contracts abroad, either to buy the technologies that we don't make in the UK or exquisite capabilities that we buy from single sources, and he can think of probably a few of those examples from his time as a defence minister. We're now introducing an offsets regime so we can ensure that British companies benefit from that as well. That's a model that has worked well in Australia and in Norway, and a number of other countries as well. It's one that we've announced progress on, and we've consulted on that as well. So not only are we investing in British firms, British-based firms, but we're also ensuring that when we do buy from abroad, we're making sure that there is a benefit for the UK industry as well.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Speaker earlier and the mood of the House is very much that the long-awaited Defence Investment Plan must not be produced this Friday, and yet the Minister is still unable to provide that confirmation. So can, through you, Madam Deputy Chair, we ask the Speaker whether he would consider an emergency sitting of Parliament on Friday if it is so produced?
This is a question to the Minister, not actually questions to the Chair. No doubt Mr Speaker would have heard that. Mr Speaker has made it very clear, his views, and the Chamber has made it very clear, their views. Was there actually a question in that, Mr Tice, or not? The Minister, would you want to have another attempt at a question? No.
Can the Minister confirm whether or not the plan will be produced on Friday, yes or no?
Minister.
Well, let me tell the honourable gentleman very clearly, we will publish the Defence Investment Plan before the NATO summit. And I know, because he's written to me a number of times where he doesn't like my answers from the dispatch box, I really do hope that reform can take defence more seriously and not simply try and dodge the important connections that we now know exist between senior reform figures and Russia because of the bribes that the Welsh leader of reform took from Russia. It's really important that we expose that in the public domain, because no UK party should ever be in hock to Russia.
Sir Ashley Fox.
The Defence Investment Plan is urgently needed to provide our armed forces with the resources they need to defend our nation. So does the Minister accept that when the government shows itself capable of publishing its welfare spending until 2031, but continually delays publication of the Defence Investment Plan, it sends a message to our adversaries of where its priorities lie?
No, I understand the partisan attack line that the Conservatives are coming from on this one. I understand entirely, and it's good to see the honourable gentleman now joining in with that as well. But let me be very clear on this. With increased defence spending, we've done so from the very first budget that the Chancellor made from this dispatch box. We're continuing to do that. It's £11 billion more per year today than it was under the last year of a Conservative government. We're spending that, directing more of that money at British-based firms. We're fixing the military accommodation that is in such a state. The first 1,200 worst of those military homes are now refurbished, and we're continuing that work until 9 in 10 military homes are refurbished. We've given our armed forces the biggest pay rise in 20 years, 14.1% cumulative pay rise under a Labour government, rather than the pay freezes that many of them endured under a Conservative government. We are rearming and backing Britain, and when the Defence Investment Plan is published very shortly, he will be able to see that as well.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following my honourable friend Fiona's contribution, I want to welcome the GRIPPEN contract that benefits my constituency of Mid Dorset North Pool. Others have mentioned the fast pace of uncrewed weapons, but I'm concerned about the attacks on the UK that we may see, our domestic attacks on our cyber, our energy and our food security. So can the Minister provide assurance that the DIP will address this and also fund more public awareness of the threats to our home security and the role that we must all play in the defence of the realm? Minister.
Well, can I thank her for her question and also for the championing of defence firms I know that she has around her constituency, a really important part of making the case that defence is an engine for growth. She's absolutely right that the threats we now face as a nation are more complex than they have been for a very long time. They're not just military threats. The United Kingdom is under constant cyber attack from our adversaries. It's one of the reasons why we've invested so much in our cyber defences and will continue to do so. But she also hits on a really important point. Defending our nation is not just a Ministry of Defence job. It absolutely is, but it's part of a cross-government effort, and that must include securing our food, because food security is national security. It also means securing our energy supplies. It's one of the reasons why we're investing so much in our clean power mission, to generate more of our energy in the United Kingdom, investing in renewables, good, clean, green jobs for the UK, but also reducing our reliance on energy from further afield. And Iran's reckless actions in the Middle East have, I think, shown to everyone in this House why investing in our energy security, in homegrown energy, not relying on imports from abroad, is so important.
Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The number one priority I and my Liberal Democrat colleagues put into the Renters' Rights Act was decent home standard for our military families, and I was delighted to welcome the government enacting that subsequently, as we did welcome the £9 billion for service family accommodation and military accommodation the Minister's referred to. Does the Minister agree that a poorly housed and unhealthy fighting force is not the fighting force that we need in this country, and similarly an unhealthy and poorly housed population is not what we need in this country? So will he confirm that the DIP will not be funded by raiding either the military housing budget or the affordable homes budget?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for talking about military housing? It is not just for our armed forces personnel, it is importantly for their families as well. And as someone who represents a military area in Plymouth, I know that when our forces are deployed abroad, if their families back home are living in accommodation with black mould in their kids' bedrooms, with leaky roofs or broken boilers, it affects their ability to do the job that we've asked them to do on a front line or wherever it may be. So that's why, in opposition, we made the commitment that we'd make defence housing a priority. In government, we've announced the defence housing strategy to improve, rebuild or refurbish 9 in 10 military homes, a really substantial commitment, £9 billion. We've already made substantial progress against the 1,200 worst family homes, and not only are we looking at what we can do with SFAs, single service family accommodation, we're also looking at single living accommodation as well, because those people that live on bases should also be reassured that we value their service and want them to live in decent accommodation, whichever service they may be and wherever they may be deployed.
Chadwick.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituency is home to the Sennybridge training area, which is obviously an area of vital national importance. It borders Merthyr Cynnog. That area only exists, the military training area only exists because local farmers surrendered their farms for the national interest. However, now his department is raising concerns about foreign investment in the area, notably that from Butte Energy, which plans to build wind farms that could create a physical obstruction to air traffic movements and military operations. Can the Minister outline what he's doing to support defence investment in Wales at sites like Sennybridge, and will he agree to meet with me and Merthyr Cynnog Community Council to discuss Butte Energy's plans for their area?
Can I thank him for his interest? Every single nation in the United Kingdom, including Wales, will benefit from the Defence Investment Plan. Wales is already the recipient of one of the 5 defence growth deals that we announced, with new capabilities, new investment in skills taking place, and we look forward to speaking with the new Welsh Government in due course about how we operationalise that. When it comes to wind farms, predominantly the main objection that the MOD places to wind farm development is the impact on air defence radars, but I'd be very happy if you could send me some details so we'd look at it in advance of us meeting, but very happy doing so.
Final question, Rachel Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As somebody who represents Devon as well as Somerset, can I share the Minister's sentiments about the very tragic loss of lives in West Devon last week? I'm glad that the Minister has acknowledged that the Ankara summit is imminent, but is he not deeply concerned that the government's dither and delay in publishing the Defence Investment Plan is seriously undermining our credibility with our friends in the world and sending a signal of immense weakness to our foes, and further, that at a time when we should be showing leadership, I'm afraid this government is showing lethargy?
Minister.
Well, I don't quite agree with her assessment of this one here. If you look at the announcements that we've made as a government on defence in only the past few months, the standing up of the coalition of the willing with our friends in France, a multinational effort to support Ukraine, our continued support for Ukraine in providing kit and equipment and training for them, the forward land forces that we have in Estonia being equipped with the latest drone technology, the work that we're doing with the UK-led mission in the Strait of Hormuz, deploying brand new autonomous capabilities as part of a hybrid navy to deal with Iranian mines there. You can see the UK stepping up. And what I've certainly seen over the last 2 years as a defence minister is our international friends, be they parties of the left or the right in government, making the case that Britain is back on the world stage, that UK leadership matters, and when it comes to especially a changing geopolitical system, which we can all see around the world, how UK leadership in the Euro-Atlantic is especially welcome and is more desired from our allies to work with us on capabilities and deployments. She and the whole House will see more of that when the Defence Investment Plan is published shortly.
That is the end of the urgent question on the Defence Investment Plan. Point of order, James Cartledge.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before you came to the chair, you'll have heard the very, very strong statement from Mr. Speaker about the prospect of the Defence Investment Plan being delivered when the House is not sitting. His words were that it would be an utter kick in the face to Parliament if that was to happen. Now, I've raised it directly to the Minister. Colleagues from across the House on this side, from 3 different parties, have asked the very explicit and specific question as to whether it's going to be delivered when the House is sitting. Surely, Madam Deputy Speaker, on such an important point, for such a significant plan in the context we face internationally, we should be entitled to expect confirmation from the Minister that it will be not be delivered when the House is not sitting.
I thank the honourable member for giving notice of his point of order. The Speaker made it abundantly clear at the start of this statement just how important it is that the Defence Investment Plan is presented first to Parliament, and that members of this House have the opportunity to ask questions about it as soon as the plan is published. As the Speaker said, I hope that speculation around the plan that is to be published on a non-sitting day is proven wrong. The House comes first. Of course, the government could, bring forward a motion to enable the House to sit on a non-sitting Friday, if those were the circumstances. If the honourable member wishes further advice on that, of course he can get further advice on parliamentary procedure from the clerks in the table office. But Mr. Speaker made his views abundantly clear. Does the Minister wish to respond or not? OK, we'll allow the front benches to now shuffle over. Right, if the House is ready, I call the Minister to move the Ways and Means motion in respect of the Railways Bill. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
Oh, miss. The question is on the order paper. Minister Kemaker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is my pleasure to open this debate on... Oh,
my apologies. I was thinking about the past bit of business. I wasn't focused on this bit of business. The question is, as on the order paper, as many in that opinion say aye.
Aye.
On the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. We must... Well, the clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Railways Bill, as amended in the Public Bill Committee, to be considered.
Now. We will begin with new clause 48, with which it will be convenient to consider other new clauses and amendments as listed on the selection paper. I now call the Minister to move new clause 48.
Second time the charm, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is my pleasure to open this debate on the Railways Bill. As we have said before, this landmark piece of legislation will deliver the once-in-a-generation reform that our country's railways are crying out for. For the first time in 30 years, Britain will finally have a railway owned by the public for the public, one that puts passengers first, that seizes the opportunities of freight, offers a better deal for taxpayers and is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, during the bill's second reading, we heard widespread support for reform across the House. At committee stage, we saw agreement across all parties about the need to establish a directing mind for our railways, the need to put passengers first, and the need to deliver growth that we know our railways can deliver when they are at their best. And while there are naturally some disagreements about the details of delivering this reform, throughout these debates I have yet to hear any other political party suggest an alternative way forward that meets the scale of the challenge that our railways face. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government, I'll make some progress, but you can come in later. The Government is also responding properly to the feedback from this House. Following the Transport Select Committee's reports, we've committed to publish a discussion document on the long-term rail strategy. Last week, we published a policy document setting out the emerging proposition for the GBR licence, and recognising the strength of feeling from both the Bill Committee and the Select Committee. Just yesterday, we published a document setting out a timeline for the publication of the key documents that will sit alongside the bill. Unlike the previous government, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are getting on with the business of reform, and we are collaborating with this House to do so. I, together with my counterpart in the other place, the Minister for Rail, have engaged extensively on a number of important issues ahead of this debate, and I hope to continue that cooperation when I respond to the amendments tabled today. I'll use this first opportunity. I'll give way to the right honourable gentleman.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way. One concern that has been repeatedly raised during scrutiny is that Great British Railways will both operate services, Madam Deputy Speaker, and have significant influence, be that directing mind, over access to the network. So, if a future Hull Trains application, I know the Minister like me uses Hull Trains, were to compete with a GBR-operated service for scarce capacity on the East Coast Main Line, who does the Minister believe passengers would trust to make that decision? The independent regulator or GBR itself?
Minister.
I'm grateful to the right honourable member for raising this important point again about open access, which I know he did at second reading, and I share his passion for Hull Trains. I'm surprised we've not met on a Hull Train to have a subsequent conversation about open access. GBR needs to be the directing mind for the railway. It needs to take those decisions on what constitutes best use in a way that is fair, that provides a role for open access, but also that is compliant with its duties, especially around the need to grow rail freight on the network, with the Secretary of State also being compelled to set a rail freight growth target as well. So there is nothing precluding open access from playing its full role as part of our railway under GBR, providing it offers value for money and the great service which both he and I have experienced, it certainly can. Now, I'd like to make a little bit of progress before I'll let him make a very short intervention.
Grateful for the Minister making a point, but before he moves on, I think the whole issue about open access agreements is a very important one, because there is an inherent conflict within this new bill and arrangement. I wasn't clear whether it was the Transport Secretary or the OOR, Office of Rail and Road, who will take that decision. And one example is the new open access bid from Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway, which will see a direct link from Shropshire to London, stopping in the important market town of Wellington. He talked about economic growth. That will be a multi-million-pound boost to the market town of Wellington if that direct access is allowed. So who will make the decision on it?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman for pushing me further on this issue. It's GBR's responsibility to determine what constitutes best use of the railway in relation to its duties. The role of the ORR within that process is that decisions can be referred to it when it is the view of stakeholders, whether that be an open access operator or anybody else, that GBR has incorrectly applied the framework by which it needs to determine best use on the railway, if it's made a decision in a way that is irrational or which is unfair and prejudicing one stakeholder over the other. So there are important and robust safeguards for the ORR to be able to determine whether the way in which GBR has determined best use is consistent with the framework that we have provided for it, and I hope that provides him with a reassurance. I would like to make some progress now, if she will forgive me, but I want to use this first opportunity to speak about the government amendments tabled in the name of my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Transport, which I beg to move. I then look forward to hearing about some of the amendments tabled by others today, and I will respond to those amendments at at the conclusion of proceedings. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me begin with Amendment 92. Now, I believe in this House that we need to be honest. Under previous governments, British people have been promised real change, only for it to be abandoned on first contact with political reality. Well, not this time. Labour promised to nationalise our railways, no ifs, no buts, and today that is exactly what we will do. We are acting in law so that Great British Railways, the People's Railway, is owned by the British people and run in their interests and not in the service of private profits. I know this might appall parties opposite, but they should believe me. Ordinary people in Britain won't ask why we are taking this bold step. They will be asking those who had the power to do so what took them so very long. And I will give way now to my honourable friend, the member for Leeds East.
I thank my honourable friend, the Minister, for giving way, and I very much welcome this. I recently had a very productive meeting with the Rail Minister in the other place regarding my amendments to close loopholes which could allow private companies to creep back into operating GBR rail services. The Minister kindly promised to take this on board, and I'm pleased to see these issues addressed by the Government's own new amendments, 92 and 106, and also the Minister committing to bringing further changes regarding the Secretary of State having powers of designation to ensure they can't be used for backdoor privatisation. So could I invite the Minister to provide further commentary and reassurance to this House regarding the Government's moves in relation to this, on this very welcome position that the Government's taken?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I hope that he sees the amendments that the government is putting forward to ensure that Great British Railways can't be privatised by the back door, that if any changes were to be made, they would have to be through an Act of Parliament with full consultation in this House. And I'm sure that the people who have sent us all here would look at the proposition to turn back the clock on the momentous decision that we are taking today, back to a railway that was fractured, in decline, confusing for passengers to operate, and they would encourage every member of Parliament not to. That is the importance of the amendments that we are passing today, and I'm glad that the honourable member sees the importance in doing so. I will give way very briefly.
Thank the Right Honourable for giving way. GBR launched in my Bournemouth West constituency when South West Rails came back into public ownership, and the engineers at the depot there said that by bringing rail and the railways together would it make an improvement for the customer experience. So can he expand on that in his remarks here?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her intervention. I'm glad that she is working so closely with the people who drive our railway to talk about the impact that GBR will make. She is right to say that by integrating track and train, having a single directing mind for our railway, we can think in a more holistic sense about the skills of the people that we need to drive that change, and that's something that I think is a really exciting possibility to take forward. Just finally, on this specific amendment, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to pay special tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Birmingham Northfield. It is no exaggeration to say that without his efforts, this historic provision would not be entering the statute book. And I'd like to thank him for his work with my officials and the Rail Minister to make this change a reality. I can see too that the honourable member for South West Devon is attempting again in her amendments, and we discussed this at committee, to press the railway back into a mode of franchising. It is the 30 years of privatisation that left our railways in the fragmented and dysfunctional state they were in when this government came to power. We took immediate steps to fix this, passing the Passenger Railways Act in 2024, and it is only right that any future government that wished to return us to a railway with rising costs, confusing and inconsistent fares, and record cancellations should have to seek agreement from this place. Now, turning to new clauses 49 and 50 and amendments 124 and 132, these introduce a new route for the independent sector regulator, the ORR, to modify non-GBR operator licences. It will allow the ORR, after consultation with the operator and others and the passing of a statutory notice period, to modify the contents of a licence. This approach is consistent with that taken in other regulated sectors such as water, electricity and gas. Such modifications will be needed across industry to reflect the changes we are making in this bill and to ensure a consistent adoption of standards and services across the rail network. Amendments 168 and 169, meanwhile, ensure that the ORR can still make technical modifications
I live just down the turn, about 2 miles away, that's all. Yeah, ever since started off with kids, and then you get the sense and you realise you just can't keep pushing it. So then I went voted Conservative, so then I wanted Brexit. So I would see reform none of the others are. He's got the book that needs to be said. The others are me and the mode there. But I am a racist. That's my sister. He thinks anybody who's voted for yeah, so the only trouble is that the store of kind of quite a decent my sister Adam and my mother both because I like what we proposes as well, so, and unfortunately I don't think they'll get together and they need to because the left will it's anything to stop reform, isn't it? So the Greens will just walk well, I think Burnham's going to win, unfortunately. I think the fact that the store is stood is going to take votes away from reform. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a canvassing here, so it's favourite Burnham. But I can't understand why. I can't understand why he makes it. Now I can't reform twice as many votes for Labour, and now suddenly those people voting reform switch to Labour. Well, that thing looks down. You've still got the same party. What you feeling with what you're seeing?
I mean, I saw that opinion poll actually.
10? Well, I suppose if you combine the store and reform, I think they were about 2% behind. Nobody knows, do they? Yeah. No one knows. I just think the store can do a lot of damage. I wouldn't say I'm vote for them. Coincidentally, the first branch meeting they had was on Friday. Josh Simons resigned. So instead of it just being like everybody getting together to find what's going on, they were then out campaigning to have a candidate. So, and they wouldn't budge on it at all. They only had strike off and reform would stand out if they want. Reform are well done around here, so why would you do that apart from whatever's gone on between the two of them in the family? And that's all good. If you've got, I don't know. I know I've seen all the stuff now. They've not chopped through a social media yet, because they got something from many years ago that said and whatever. Unbelievable, isn't it? If everybody had the passport exposed like that, none of us would do anything, would we? Who's white and white?
Yeah, I think it's close-ish. I just don't know though. I couldn't vote.
No, I think will win. I don't know that that's going to do the country any good anyway. Restricted by the rules of what we do. If he goes outside of that, then the whole market is going haywire. Yeah. Good time to buy guilt for then. So, if you've got a bit of cash lying about, get vote for Burnham. It must be micromanaged like fan over the time. It must be like down to the minute, mustn't it? Like, like I can go and sit on the couch watch. But his day will be just mapped out, won't it? I'd suppose
it should be starting in about 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes time. Okay.
It's a massive
it for us to stand up and become an active member of Parliament. Oh yeah, especially today with all the recruit, social media, say something wrong or whatever, listen to yeah. Well, I think that was a rugby player. I mean, can't get away from it. Starstruck at Oh, is it? How long will you be? Oh, yeah, right. Well, that's all right. I know. Yeah. But, so what are you a cameraman or a film? You're a what? Oh, are you? Oh, right, okay. So you'll put a report together with it? Might do. I don't know yet. Well, it's supposed to be an election of policy, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, we're mostly now. So we've got two What? Did you follow the meet to Gordon then? It's a nice film. I thought we might have put him through actually. Because I remember Rock from BBC. Oh, right. When they were developing way back on floor. So, well, we did there was quite a few meetings in Europe. We had Lord Smith, you know, from he was the head of the council, so he came there as well. You know. So we got it was rejected.
White van wave, make a few gun turquoise. Watch the whole lens rise. Rob Kenyon pull up. Plumber with the tools. David versus Goliath. Spanner in the lab, yo. Straight out there, no suit, no tie. White van on the drive.
Hello everyone. Hope you're all right. It's a nice sunny day today. I think we've picked the weather, haven't we? But it's been an absolutely mad campaign this. Who'd have thought this 4 weeks ago we'd have this in Wigan? You know, all this attention, everyone, there's people walking around the streets, knocking on doors, there's banners everywhere. And like I say, just a normal working class lad like myself, everyone's going, I know him. He's worked with him, he's served me boiler. But it's just good to get someone normal working class, instead of all these career politicians. You get someone who's normal, someone you can relate to, someone who knows what it's like. So it's been absolutely manic. But we've been knocking on doors, it's been fantastic. But it's good to see so many vans. My van's not car park over here, so I'll leave mine as well. I've got to do a job the next couple of days as well, just get that finished off. But yeah, they've hit us hard, haven't they, Labour? They tried bringing the cleaners on, that cost us £10 a day for drive our vans. And they're just hammering us, like 4 tax returns a year now if you're a sole trader. They've battered us. But listen, I'll give you an introduction, even though he doesn't need one. But the man who's going to make all this happen, and the man who you've come here to see today, it's none other than, let's have a warm round of applause, a big Wigan welcome all the way from over there. It's Mr Nigel Farage.
Big Wigan welcome. Well, thank you. Thank you for that big Wigan welcome. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure working with Rob over the course of the last few weeks. He has grown, not physically in stature, but in terms of his confidence. I'm told he's just done a hustings down the road, and he's getting better and better and better every time. And, you know, it's quite something that 1 minute you're fixing boilers, and 3 weeks later you're live on Question Time with an audience that I would suggest wasn't necessarily that neutral. There is no doubt in my mind that this is close. No doubt in anybody's mind that it is a 2-horse race. And no doubt in my mind, having been out for a couple of hours this morning going out round the doors, that we've certainly gained momentum from this time last week. I could see that with doors that have been considerers beginning to come to us in real numbers. So I'm very excited for what can happen here over the course of the next week. Going out knocking on doors is difficult for a party like ours because unless they're retired, most of our voters are part of Alarm Clock Britain. These are people that get up in the morning and go to work. Can you believe it? Yes, there are still people left in Britain that do actually go to work. And it's people who work that I want to talk about today. Yes, there's White Van Man, there's Rob, there are the sole traders, there are those that run small, limited companies. But there are something like 4.5 million businesses in Britain that are either sole traders or have fewer than 3 employees. About 4.5 million. And they have been one of the most put upon groups in society over the course of the last few decades. Westminster doesn't understand tradesmen and women. Westminster does not understand small business. And every time legislation comes in, whether it's around employment, the environment, health and safety, it applies equally to the small employer as it does to a giant multinational that's employing thousands of people. And that is one of the problems. The other problem, of course, is that virtually nobody, and certainly not in the Labour cabinet, has ever set up their own business, has ever worked for themselves. There is a complete lack of understanding. And there are several bugbears. One of them Rob has mentioned already. The idea that a sole trader now has to register online for tax 4 times a year. Frankly, under pain of a terrible penalty if they make the slightest error. Now, this is probably good news for local accountants who are having to do all the work, but it's not good news for those that are self-employed and running small businesses. And we will get rid of that provision, ease some of the burden that is being put upon these millions of people. But the really big one is the VAT threshold. In 2024, when Jeremy Hunt was the Conservative Chancellor, he put the threshold up by a derisory £5,000. So little that it frankly made no difference at all. And I wondered why he'd done that. Well, of course, as we know, Jeremy Hunt, a very keen Remainer, and the European Union has within its rules that the threshold for VAT cannot be above €100,000. That's why we got the derisory rise, and I can tell you, after 20 years, 7 months, 3 days and 4 hours as an MEP, that there is no understanding in Brussels of small business at all. All the rules and regulations are made for the big companies. So, as part of our Brexit freedoms, and in an effort to give incentives, and we think this move I'm about to announce will directly impact 1/3 businesses on day one, but perhaps many, many more. What it will also do, it will increase productivity, because there are tens of thousands of companies whose income is just below the VAT threshold. They've got no incentive to take on another contract, no incentive to take on more work. So this will also boost productivity, and it is the right thing to do. And we are on the side of working people in this country. And not just those running small businesses and sole traders. I even met yesterday with one of the top conveners in the country from the Unite Union. We're on the side of working people. So what I'm going to propose today is something that ought to have happened many, many years ago, couldn't happen all the while we were in the grip of the European Union, won't happen with politicians that frankly want to take us back there, and that's pretty obvious by everything that the Prime Minister and this Labour government are doing, and that is to increase the VAT threshold from £90,000 to £150,000. Yes, on the face of it, there's an economic cost to it, an economic cost of about £2 billion. But if I'm right in that it leads to changes in behaviour by making people hungrier to take on more work, to employ more people, to grow their businesses, it'll begin to pay for itself. And it is for the first time giving the sole trader, the self-employed, the small businessman and woman, the first time, almost forever, giving them a break, because jolly well don't they deserve it. They are the backbone of our economy. And if you go broader with small businesses, they provide about 60% of the employment in the private labour market in this country. So we're very much on the side of white van man. We're very much on the side of the computer programmer. We're very much on the side of those people prepared to take a risk with no sick pay or anything like that, and to go out on their own and forge a future. And it's something the country needs very, very badly. I will, while I'm here, say some words about the barbarity that we saw on the streets of Belfast the other evening. It feels like Henry Novak was just a few days ago, and yet we've moved on now to a new story. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this man should not have been in this country. It is just as simple as that. He entered the country illegally, and is it any surprise that people in Belfast and elsewhere are scared? None of that justifies what was perpetrated by some bad actors last night. There's no doubt about that. There were some very, very bad actors doing bad things, but the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action. There's none. Have you heard a single proposal for how any of this is going to change? In fact, if we go back to the Novak case last week, the Prime Minister is still in denial about two-tier policing in this country, yet you can see it written down on paper in terms of the instructions that are given to police officers. And I think these issues, the Belfast attempted beheading, the Novak death, these issues show, I think, how incredibly disconnected Westminster MPs and much of mainstream media are from where the centre of gravity, the common sense centre of gravity, is out there in the rest of the country. The gulf, the gap between the two, I don't think has ever been wider. And I think we are much more in touch with the common sense British public than the other political parties. That's certainly how I feel. about it. Well, thank you all for coming along this afternoon. We've got a lot of work to do this evening, and there's no excuse. Manchester without the rain. We've got to take advantage of it. Before we go on to a private members' meeting across the road in a snooker club, I have got questions from the media, beginning with Kevin Fitzpatrick from BBC Northwest.
Hi, Nigel. Local questions for me on the Makerfield by-election. How would you sum up the campaign, really, and what's going to be the message in the last week or so? And in terms of the threat from Restore Britain to your votes, are you concerned that a chunk of votes going to Restore who might ordinarily have voted Reform could cost you this by-election?
OK, the first thing to say is there's a phrase that's coming up on the doorstep. I heard it several times this morning. Mr Burnham is using this as a stepping stone. And that is not something that we've put into voters' minds. It's something people on the doorstep are volunteering to me. They see this as being a very cynical move, and I think for the last week of the campaign, we must emphasise and re-emphasise that Rob is a tradesman, a rugby fan, a family man, a former army reservist, about as far away from a career politician as you probably ever could get, thank the Lord. And I think we've got to keep pushing that fact that he's a local man, he's got family history in this constituency that goes back for 200 years, and he will be your MP. This is not a stepping stone for Rob. This is something that he actually passionately wants to do. That, I think, is going to be the key message over the course of the next few days. On the Restore vote, well, look, it's quite simple. It's quite simple. This is a two-horse race. It's a two-horse race. And if you vote for Restore, you risk, perhaps, the most left-wing Prime Minister of modern times. So that's the simple message that I'm going to put to Restore voters. I'm not going to return the levels of hatred and abuse that we get from some of their supporters online. It's pretty vile stuff, I can tell you. I'm not going to return the compliment. Just make it very, very clear. It's a two-horse race. Only Reform can beat the Labour Party in this by-election. And that is what I intend to do. Thank you very much. Charles Graham from the Wigan Observer.
Hello there. I was going to ask this one right at the end, but it turns out I'm at the beginning.
Well, there you go.
We've got a lot of conflict, haven't we? There's the cut and thrust of politics and all that. But do you think that when all the dust has settled, you and Rob Kenyon would sit down and have a couple of beers with Andy Burnham, do you think?
That's a good question.
You clearly haven't studied my reputation. I'll have a beer with anybody. Well, I tell you what, if he were to turn out to be the winner and get his 81 signatures and launch his campaign to become the next Prime Minister, I think Rob and I would love to sit down with him, because there are several things we'd want to say to him. And one of the first of those would be, please don't leave behind working people. Do you know, one of the doorstep conversations this morning, bloke answered the door. He said, I run a small business. My alarm goes off at 5:30 every morning. I feel that everything's against me. I feel completely put upon. He said, so much so that I ask myself some mornings at 5:30, why the hell am I even bothering? And I think maybe Mr Burnham and the other senior figures in the Labour Party don't actually get that, don't understand that. And if we win, we'll invite him to the victory party. Okay, so there you go. Edward Barnes from the Manchester Evening News.
So given that Reform is saying that the race is close and obviously the controversies over past social media comments, do you feel like this campaign could have gone any better than it's gone so far?
On the past social media comments, I'm going to say this. You know, these comments were posted a decade ago. They've been taken wildly out of context, but they're the sort of comments that you won't necessarily get if you're an Oxford-educated career politician living in a nice postcode in London. But I tell you what, they're the kind of comments you'll hear in every pub in the country every evening, and we should be unapologetic that Rob is an ordinary bloke who's carved quite a career for himself, had the guts to set up a business, served as an army reservist, is a patriot, likes his rugby, likes the odd pint, and said a few laddish things on social media 10 years ago. Do you know what I'd say to that? I'd say, so what? And what about all those politicians at local and national level in the north of England that covered up the grooming gang scandal at exactly the same time? Which of those is more serious? Thank you. Thank you. And how was your hustings? It was good. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Aaron Newbury, Daily Express.
Good afternoon. How concerned are you that Makerfield residents would effectively be left behind should Andy Burnham win, because he'll be a bit busy moving into number 10? And if I may, 66% of people here voted to leave the European Union, and Burnham has said he wants to take us back in his lifetime. What's your message to Brexiteers in this seat who've yet to decide which party to back?
Don't vote for a guy that treats your vote with contempt, thinks he knows better than you, and wants to overturn the biggest open democratic result that we've ever had in this nation's history. And Aaron, your question sort of leads on from the stepping stone comment that I was getting earlier on today. We don't want the people of Makerfield to be left behind. We want them to have an engaged local lad acting as their Member of Parliament, standing up for their interests, defending the Green Belt where it's necessary, fighting for a new local hospital and doing all of those things. If you don't want to be left behind, then you better go out and vote Reform and vote Rob next Thursday. Thank you very much indeed. Christian Cowgie, Daily Mail.
Good afternoon. A couple of quick ones. We've published quite a few exposés on some astonishing levels of racism and anti-Semitism in Restore UK. Do you think that voters really understand what they might be getting into bed with if they vote for Mr Lowe's party? And secondly, you've taken a range of questions from various outlets of different ideologies today. Andy Burnham seems very reluctant to talk to anyone who might, ask some awkward questions. I just wondered, do you think he's ready for the big time, or is he a bit thin-skinned?
One voter on my doorstep was very rude about it, called him a wet wipe. I won't say I agree with that. Dreadful. Even in the course of the last month, he's flipped and flopped more on policy positions even than Keir Starmer has done in the course of the last 2 years. We know he's to the left politically, but what does he actually believe in? What is he actually going to stand up and fight for? And I don't know the answer to that. He doesn't know the answer to that. He actually does tick that box of career politician, telling people what he thinks they want to hear without ever being able to deliver it. And frankly, I would make this prediction. If he was successful next week, the honeymoon that he has as Prime Minister, I doubt will last till lunchtime, because he'll become a hostage of the backbenches, and our debt levels will continue to spiral. You probably saw this week that our national debt is increasing faster than any other country in the world than Botswana. So we're in big trouble. And I do think that my prediction of a 2027 general election will come true, and it's the economy that will force it. On Restore, look, the truth is that they're getting a massive social media push from Elon Musk and X. That's really what's going on. If that wasn't happening, it frankly wouldn't really exist. All right? That's the absolute truth of it. Short term, it has the potential to be unhelpful. Long term, I don't believe it'll last. And if you look at one or two of their senior commentators, as one I can think of in particular, you know, doing a podcast and saying to a chap whose family have been in Britain for many generations, well, because you're a Jew, you'll have to be kicked out. I think that speaks for itself. And I'm not sure the wider audience have yet seen all of that, but they will before very long. Thank you. Peter Schnettmanger's Daily Telegraph.
Hiya. The Henry Novak murder last week, or sorry, not last week, but the events of it last week and what we've seen in Belfast this week has pushed immigration back to the top of a lot of people's agenda. You spoke about this being a very close race in Makerfield. Do you think that that being at the top of the agenda, you know, helps you in this race? And what do you think is going to take place over the next 7 days?
Well, yeah, Burnham's record on this, of course, is he supports open-door migration. He's never been critical of it in any way at all. And